It's Thanksgiving week, and the headlines are packed. Terror in D.C. There was a recent UPS airplane disaster, and the mysterious Atlas comet is heading our way. The government reopens and prominent officials admit there are aliens, controversial vaccination discussions, and a peanut allergy surprise. As usual, we've got a lot to cover. A busy time in U.S. news and world news, even some out-of-this-world news. It's flu season, and we have some important healthcare topics. Welcome to episode 24 of the YoJoeShow Podcast, Thanksgiving edition.
Brace yourself. Tech, politics, health. It's all here. Join thousands shocked by the YoJoe Show's unfiltered truths. Smash that subscribe button now and blow your mind.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to the YoJoe Show Podcast. Hey, Joe, how's life?
Heart's beating, lungs are working, life's good. How are you doing?
Good. It's been a while since we've had a kind of a nice one-on-one conversation like this. I've kind of missed it.
It has been a while, but here we are, and it's Thanksgiving. Let's start off
Hey,
by wishing
everyone.
happy Thanksgiving, obviously to you and family and everyone else and our entire audience. So there's a lot of things to be thankful for. We are thankful to be here, thankful to have you in my life and in this podcast, and that we're moving ahead with episode 24.
I'm excited to get started. I think we have a nice intro relevant for today, don't we?
We do. In fact, this time of year, people spend time trying to get the family. I think there's something like over 80 million travelers in the United States this Thanksgiving. And people are trying to be with family and friends and to think about the things that are most important. And for many people, what's most important?
Health, family.
Yes. But this
friends,
time of year,
and
Thanksgiving, what do people focus on?
Well, I'm lost. Peace, eating. Yes, that's a minor importance.
There's actually a purpose to this holiday, and who better than Jesse Waters' man on the street, John, out and finding out what people are thinking this time of year. That's probably the best way to start.
Good. We can always count on them being funny.
Yeah, let's take a look and try to think of how we would answer some of these questions if we were any better than the people being questioned.
Thanksgiving.
Oh, sorry, my fault. I thought you were doing an intro. Do it again.
Okay.
Do it again.
Thanksgiving is this Thursday. What are you excited to eat?
Stuffing. That has to be the best.
Mac and cheese.
Ew. Oh, for Thanksgiving? Yes.
I'll eat pretty much anything. I mean, the stature speaks for itself.
Start exercising.
What happened on the first Thanksgiving?
My first Thanksgiving?
No, the first one to ever exist.
I was too high to remember.
People from America cooked the turkey and they ate it.
I just know that you're supposed to eat.
Got a lot of cameras on me. I'm not sure.
Guys, turn the cameras off for a second.
I ain't falling for none of these tricks, I'll tells you what.
Turn the cameras around, please. They never do it.
Who ate together on the first Thanksgiving?
People ate together.
Christopher Columbus. Was it George Washington?
And?
Lincoln?
The Pilgrims?
Oh!
I'll be.
Pilgrims and the Native Americans.
What are the Native Americans also known as?
The Indians.
Why would you say that? That's not politically correct.
But that's what they were taught in school, but now it's people are
That's
now politically
horrible.
correct. I would never say that.
What did they serve on the first Thanksgiving?
I'm afraid I don't remember.
Cow.
Salads, bread,
Rolls. Bread. What did they cook it in? They didn't have all this technology.
turkey.
It was pizza.
Have your pizza?
Leave it on the doorstep and get the hell out of here.
What country did the Pilgrims come from?
Europe.
That's a continent.
It's not a country.
Ireland,
Spain.
England.
turkey.
Why did the Pilgrims come here?
Spice trade.
Discovery of America.
For religious reasons.
They were getting rid of the king.
No.
Really? Dang.
How did the Pilgrims get here?
Boat.
This is correct.
I'll be.
You know who you remind me of a bit?
What?
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz, really?
Kiss my ass.
What was the name of the boat the Pilgrims came on?
The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
Carnival. The Mayflower.
The Titanic.
Somehow, I don't remember these names, even though I feel like I should.
I'll be.
I'll be.
Darn.
Why do they call
Yeah,
Black
not-
Friday Black Friday?
I don't know. Like late?
Black tags on everything, right? Like, no?
Probably because everyone just blacks out and buys everything.
Big mistake. Big. Huge.
What are you thankful for on this Thanksgiving?
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
I got a job today.
Grilled cheese.
Grilled cheese sandwiches with tomato soup.
Johnny Balsarian.
That was pretty
On the
entertaining.
street for Jesse Waters. Always does a good job, right?
Yeah, entertaining, funny. And I want to say, thankfully, didn't make Americans look too bad compared to a lot of these other videos, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think they did okay. I think they did okay. And this time of year, a lot of people are going to obviously be watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And,
Yeah, that's a big one.
Everything is decked out and people are just watching a lot of nostalgic movies. But there's actually something that's, I believe, before your time, you might not even be aware of. It aired from the late 70s, I think like 78 to 82. Do you remember a TV show called WKRP in Cincinnati?
Nope.
So you're in for a treat. So this is an epic, it was a show everyone would watch, right? And they had this one episode for Thanksgiving, which was pretty remarkable. And because it's been dormant for a while, I thought it would be a fun way to get this episode started, to be reminiscent and to set the stage. WKRP was a fictitious radio station, and the show revolved around characters in the radio station. A lot of people don't know, but the reason it was called WKRP, the people who created the CBS show were making fun of the radio station that they were portraying, which was really crappy. So KRP, W crap. WKRP.
Good one. Cute.
Yeah, but it was funny, and it was one of these shows that everyone would watch. But this is probably the most epic episode that they had for Thanksgiving. So everyone knew there was going to be some great Thanksgiving event being done, and Les Nessman, their man on the street, was going to cover the event. And they didn't tell Les what it was all about. He went to cover it, and since you haven't seen it, let's take a look.
All right, fellow babies, and now it's time to go to our live remote man on the scene at the Pinedale Shopping Mall for the big WKRP Turkey giveaway. So, take it away, Les Nessman.
This is Les Nessman, your man on the scene here at the Pinedale Shopping Center, where the excitement is mounting. We're here to witness the big WKRP Turkey Thanksgiving giveaway.
Hey, you got permission to be out here?
What?
You're blocking my store here, buddy.
Don't you know who I am? I'm Les Nessman. I won the Buckeye News Hawk Award last year.
Good for you, Buckeye. Now get out of my doorway.
I'm sorry. Creep.
So far, so good, huh?
I'm here with hundreds of people who have gathered to witness what has been described as perhaps the greatest turkey event in Thanksgiving Day history. All we know for sure is that in a very few moments there are going to be a lot of happy people out here. Now the crowd is curious but well behaved. And I think I hear something now. The crowd is moving out into the parking area. And oh yes, I can see it now. It's a helicopter, and it's coming this way.
A helicopter?
It's flying something behind it. I can't quite make it out. It's a large banner, and it says, Happy Thanksgiving from WKRP. What a sight, ladies and gentlemen, what a sight. The copter seems to be circling the parking area now. I guess it's looking for a place to land. No, something just came out of the back of the helicopter. It's a dark object, perhaps a skydiver, plummeting to the earth from only 2,000 feet into the air. Second and a third. There's no parachutes yet. Those can't be skydivers. I can't tell just yet what they are, but... Oh, my God, they're turkeys! Oh, Johnny, can you get this? Oh, they're crashing to the earth right in front of our eyes. One just went through the windshield of a parked car. Johnny, this is terrible. The crowd is running around, pushing each other. Oh, my goodness. Oh, the humanity. Oh, people are running about. The turkeys are hitting the ground like sacks of wet cement. I don't know how much longer the crowd is running for their lives. I think I'm going to step inside. I can't stay out here and watch this any longer. No, I can't go in there. Children are searching for their mothers, and not since the Hindenburg tragedy has there been anything like this. I don't know how much longer I can hold my position here, Johnny. The crowd...
Les, are you there? Les isn't there. Thanks for that on-the-spot report, Les. For those of you who just tuned in, the Pinedale Shopping Mall has just been bombed with live turkey. Film at 11.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Didn't turn out too well.
Yeah, we lack true journalists nowadays, so kudos to Wes Mess, who almost died in the course of his duty. So that's
right.
Real journalistic job right there.
Again, with people watching the Thanksgiving Day festivities, it's just back in time to mocking what can happen when you go to these events. You never know what's been planned, and you hope the people planning them have a little more foresight. They could research what type of birds can and cannot fly before they be ejected from a helicopter.
And if they are not alive.
No, these were live turkeys. The story goes, and apparently, I think one survived and started.
Did they actually do it? Did they? Is this?
No, it's a TV show. So
it's a skit, yeah.
The story is that these were live turkeys that they thought would fly to the ground, and it would be so beautiful as they would fly in the air and come and land, but they didn't know how to do that. So
they're a bit heavy.
A little heavy. Yeah, just like chickens aren't the good flyers either. It just is what it is. Listen, as we move along through the holiday season, obviously now the year's coming to an end. We just got through Halloween. And one of the things that's really cool at Halloween is that people really go out of their way, I think, sometimes to just bring smiles to people's faces. Forget about all the candy. But I think all the other stuff that goes with it, there are some interesting and fun things that happen during Halloween. Put some stuff together that we wanted to share in the aftermath, the postscript of the Halloween that we thought we would share. There's some really pretty cool things, and the internet is such a fun place. Guess what? When you put it all together, we thought we'd share it. So let's take a look back at the Halloween we just had and some of the things we saw online.
Spooky.
The very first clip in the compilation is actually from the Seminole Tribe of Florida. They have a large billion-dollar hotel shaped like a guitar, and it illuminates and they project images onto it. This is pretty amazing.
It's an impressive building. I remember when they were constructing it.
Monster from its slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise, he did the monster man. It was a graveyard smash. It caught on in a flash. He did the monster man. From my laboratory in the castle east, the master bedroom.
You see the cows getting up back there? Little man, you want to go down this way?
If we ran into Jew, we'd probably touch the hey girls.
At the moonlight, it feels like that almost stopped your heart. You try to scream, but terror takes the sound before you make it. And you start to freeze as someone looks you right between your eyes. You're paralyzed, 'cause this is
Hey, Georgie, what a nice boat. Do you want it? Look like a nice boy. You want a balloon too, Georgie? Oh, how Pennywise. Handsome clown. Pennywise.
George, drop it like it's hot. When the pigs try to get at you, park it like it's.
And now, you're mine.
You and your homies might be lying to talk. The wonderful thing about Tiggers is Tiggers are wonderful things. To memorize the way you shock me, the way you move here.
Those are very cute, and
another thing to be thankful for, the content creators put some of that stuff together out on the internet, and thankful to have the internet.
yeah, it's entertaining and funny and beautiful, especially the one with the dogs. They're just adorable.
And listen, I think that in many ways, that's the way we got to look at things. Look at the positivity and the effort people put in sometimes just to make other people smile or to make the world a better place. Sometimes these small things that matter. And as we move through the episode, obviously we're going to be talking about some of the less pleasant things, but a little bit of humor and smiles here and there injected throughout the episode can maybe help us deal with some of these other realities of the world.
And there has been a lot of research on how healthy it is to smile and to laugh. It is literally medicine, probably some of the best medicine you can get. Real, true laughter and just smiling a lot is super, super good for your health.
Yeah, no, totally.
That's why we have the happy ending every episode.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no debate. I think that's something we always talk about, laughter being the best medicine, and why we always tend to end our episodes with a happy ending to the episode and some fun clips, which we will do again today. But shifting gears to some of the events that are happening, the most tragic, immediate one that's happening right now and is unfolding is what happened in Washington, D.C. And this is the 2 National Guardsmen that were attacked on the streets while trying to help make DC safer. I think we could start off with a clip on this and then maybe talk a little about it.
Terror in the heart of Washington, D.C., just 2 blocks from the White House.
This is a targeted shooting. One individual who appeared to target these guardsmen.
Video captured the moments police and National Guard troops subdued a suspect while a few feet away performing CPR on someone who's down.
Suspect came around the corner. He immediately started firing a firearm at the 2 National Guard members.
2 National Guard troops shot. NBC Washington reports one is a male guardsman, the other a female, both from West Virginia in critical condition.
There were other National Guard members that were in the area. They heard the gunfire. They actually were able to intervene and to kind of hold down the suspect after he had been shot on the ground until law enforcement got there within moments.
West Virginia's governor posting, "Our prayers are with the brave service members, their families, and the entire Guard community." NBC's Andrea Mitchell was nearby.
I was about half a block away, heard sirens. People were running in the opposite direction. I came over, talked to a woman. She said she was in an Uber, heard 2 loud booms. She did not see the alleged shooter or the incident itself, but all of a sudden, police, Secret Service started congregating right at this corner.
Adults running.
President Trump not in the White House, but in Mar-a-Lago for Thanksgiving, writing on Truth Social, the animal that shot the 2 National Guardsmen, with both being critically wounded and now in separate hospitals, is also severely wounded, but regardless, will pay a very steep price. God bless our great National Guard and all of our military and law enforcement. It was last May when President Trump ordered National Guard troops into D.C. to assist police in bringing down violent crime. Yes, today's deadly incident follows a series of attacks against federal law enforcement. In July, 10 suspects in tactical gear attacked an ICE facility, wounding a local police officer in Alvarado, Texas. Days later, a suspect opened fire on Border Patrol agents in McAllen, Texas. The suspect killed. And in September, a sniper on a roof in Dallas opened fire on a van at an ICE facility. The suspect had inscribed anti-ICE on his ammunition. 2 undocumented immigrants killed.
As the investigation gets underway, let's bring in 2 expert law enforcement individuals, retired NYPD Inspector, Fox News contributor Paul Merrow, and retired FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell. Paul, we're in Washington, D.C. This is the nation's capital. Everything here is pretty much federal. And I would imagine U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, former judge and Fox News colleague that we all know well, Kash Patel, and even Mayor Bowser, all are speaking with a single mind tonight in saying they will prosecute this individual to the fullest extent of the law. Tell us what that looks like. Is this a national security crime? Is it an act of terror? What can we expect?
So my strong inclination here is that this will end up being a terrorism charge, and here's why. Generally, federally, you need a foreign designated group to get the federal terrorism charge, Hamas, Hezbollah, something like that, except if it is on federal grounds or if it involves a federal personnel. And in this case, you have both. And that takes you about 3/4 of the way there. All you need now is to ascertain motive. And if you can ascertain from the atmospherics or from statements from the perpetrator that this was done for an ideological purpose, that is to say, to influence the policy of the government or the civilian population of the United States, that closes the loop on the federal terrorism charge. And it would be, again, my strong inclination that that's what they're looking at.
Pretty crazy, right?
It's devastating for the families of those heroic guardsmen. And yeah, it's just horrible. Do we have a clip on the identity of the attacker?
So not a clip on the identity per se, but we do have information on it. That's unfolding now. They've kept some of this under wraps. Let's see what we know or what we think we know based on what's been said. So the two guardsmen, one is a male, one's a female. They're young, they're in their 20s, I believe. They're both alive, but in critical condition. And their families spent, I guess, the night with them by their bedside. I believe they're in two different hospitals. The perpetrator was caught because there was an immediate swarming, essentially, of the area. There's obviously the DC area has a lot of law enforcement, plus now with the National Guardsmen. So they're able to go and subdue this alleged perpetrator, who's been identified as a male from Afghanistan that apparently came in 2021 after the United States withdrew very abruptly in a haphazard manner, I would say, from Afghanistan. There were a number of Afghanis that were working in the partner program that were assisting U.S. and other governments over there, including the CIA, our military, and so forth. So a lot of these individuals were allowed to come into the United States. Apparently, this was one of them. And just as recently as I think this year, they actually were granted asylum status. So there's been some talk that the individuals here illegally and so forth. That may not be accurate. Maybe more that through this convoluted program, because of the abrupt withdrawal and people that were left behind begging to get out of Afghanistan, this perpetrator apparently was in Kandahar. So was allowed to come here to the United States, has been here all this time, and apparently just now officially gotten some sort of asylum status. I think we're still waiting on a green card. And you would think there would be some thanks and appreciation for getting him out.
Hence Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so get him out of a place where he might have wound up being killed. And here he is going and targeting troops. And interestingly, the story goes that based on available information, he was not even living in DC. He might have been apparently in California or somewhere on the West Coast, traveled there, was staging out the area, and apparently the weapon was a .357 revolver that he went and literally attacked these two guardsmen. So we're waiting to see, obviously, what the supposed rationale for somebody doing this. But what's sad is that even now, as this is still unfolding, you have people in the media that are somehow trying to justify this, which is just
despicable.
So there was a media organization known as MSNBC, which now has rebranded because of a split in essentially a buyout that was happening. But
what's the new name?
MS Now.
MS Now.
Yeah, MS Now. And it doesn't seem like they're any better than MSNBC. All right. I have a small clip from them. I just want to play this just to show how mind-boggling it is to see any media going and somehow trying to act like this is perfectly normal. Let me play that.
But of course, there's so much controversy happening in the United States right now with ICE, who are also wearing uniforms and wearing masks. And so you don't know, people walking around with uniforms in an American city. There are some Americans that might object to that. Apparently this shooting has happened.
That's disgusting.
Americans may object to having people in uniform in their cities.
Because of ICE.
And if they object to it, somehow it might be okay that they go and just murder them or attempt to murder them. How could someone actually even say that? This is a professional news organization, and they're airing comments like that. The MS now stands for My Source for News, Opinion, and World, apparently. I don't want that to be my source for anything. It's just disappointing.
That's a false name. Talking about false names, the terrorist who did this attack, his name is Rahmanullah Lakanwal. Rahmanullah in Arabic, Rahman is mercy, and Allah is God. So Rahmanullah is the mercy of God. So his name is about the mercy of God, or maybe the mercy of Allah is more accurate, because definitely doesn't represent our God. And here he comes and he does some of the most despicable acts. Now, some could say that the fact that he served in Afghanistan and he worked with our forces means that he necessarily has a Western mindset and is liberal and developed and believes in democracy, but that very much is not necessarily the case. There are rumors that he yelled, or reports actually, that he yelled Allahu Akbar while committing this attack. Allahu Akbar translates to Allah is great, God is great, if you want to say that Allah is God. But God is great seems like a relevant, peaceful, religious statement that religious people will say. And it is true that Muslims will say it on many different occasions, but it is most notably a war cry. And it has been a war cry for 1,400 years. It's a war cry that every time a terrorist is about to blow themselves up or about to attack infidels or non-believers, they yell that. So it's a war cry. It rallies up the troop. When other Muslims watch it, it inspires them to go and commit other sins for Allah. It can inspire them. So if those reports are correct, it's pretty obvious. Now, the fact that he volunteered or worked for the United States and the Brits in Afghanistan doesn't mean that he transformed his mindset. It could be he needed a job, and even though he disliked the new governance, he acknowledged that this is the new governance. In Islam, there's a religious edict that basically says that when you're strong, fight, but when you're weak, know to put your head down, right? So when America conquered Afghanistan, and that seemed obvious, many people joined, A, because they needed a job and they had to feed their children and stuff, and B, because if this is the new ruler, you got to work with them, and sometimes you can do more from the inside than from the outside. So the fact that he volunteered for our forces doesn't mean he was a reformed man. And it's very sad because many of the people in Afghanistan and many of the people who have come from Afghanistan truly are reformed people, and they really believe and American values and American freedoms, and they come here and they want to assimilate. They worked with the United States in Afghanistan because they wanted to assimilate. And those are the people we should celebrate and we should bring in. But every time you have some radical lunatic terrorist like this, it blames, it casts shadow and creates blame against a lot of people who are not like this. So you can blame whoever recruited him years ago, maybe, that they didn't do their background, but that isn't relevant. Who you should blame is whoever acknowledged his passport in arriving to the United States. The fact that somebody worked with the U.S. forces doesn't mean that they have the ideologies and the mindset of the Western world. And if they do, they're welcome here. If they don't, I'm sorry, maybe we can give you some money to be rich in Afghanistan, but we don't want you here in our country if you can't fit the Western world mindset. What do you think?
Yeah, President Trump actually announced that send an order where all Afghani essentially entering into the United States on any sort of asylum claim or anything else have been paused. They're going to review essentially who's here and how they got here and what vetting was done. I think the problem is the sheer numbers of people that have been let in the last few years is really problematic when you say tens of millions of people have made it into this country in one way or another.
And how many of them actually did valuable work, endangered their lives to support American forces abroad?
Yeah, and the problem is that now a number of people that had some sort of temporary protective status, what have you, those are being terminated and they're being sent back to whatever country they were at. And why is that? Because of the sheer numbers. Okay, you have so many people that came in. Yeah, you're in. Yeah, it's like being a police officer and giving everyone a warning for the next year. No one gets a ticket, no matter what they do. They're driving on the sidewalk, whatever. At some point, there's repercussions, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. The balance wasn't there, and there's a sheer large numbers of people. So now we're in a situation where, guess what? Some of them are going to be here without, like you said, they don't have the mindset to be one of us, so to speak, in this country, to paddle in the same direction. They're here to destroy this country, or they still feel that they have an allegiance to an entirely different country that may be at odds with us. Why?
Or a religion that believes that no country has the right to exist because countries shouldn't exist in the first place.
Sure, if that's their belief, then
yeah,
we need to address it. The problem is you can't address this overnight. And you can't just snap your fingers and fix the problem. But I think it just
shows the importance of vetting people we bring into the United States. It's good to have immigrants. It's important to have immigrants, but we really have to do super strict vetting. And it's funny because the legal route, at least the traditional legal route, when somebody traditionally through normal means, through marriage or whatever, wants to move to the United States, the vetting is super harsh. But I think that under the Biden administration, there was this mindset of, hey, we're letting in everybody anyways. And these people claim that they worked and they helped us. So let's go ahead and bring in their entire extended families and their cousins and their grandkids and their grandparents and every second or third cousin and anybody who can claim that they like them, right? So I think there was some mixture. There's basically like some government officials have been captured, right, by the woke mind virus. And when the mindset of the woke mind virus is let's bring everybody in, the worse they are, the better, the quicker we should bring them in, then you're going to have a lot of people who don't do the proper vetting that they should.
Listen, I guess a good analogy is that when you compare what our border policies were for the time that Biden administration was in power, if you compare that, it was less stringent than going to a nightclub. Gosh, even a gentleman's club, a strip club had better security where they have bouncers at the door. They might have metal detectors and they're vetting who goes in. Okay, so wait a minute. The United States of America had poorer vetting than the local strip club or nightclub or whatever has on a daily basis for whatever their shows they're going to have or whatever each weekend. That's the problem. Okay, that's the problem.
There is one more note. There is one more very big problem that we should dwell some time on, and that is the fact that for years now we have seen nonstop rhetoric calling the National Guard and ICE and basically anybody who wears a uniform as fascists or Nazis or Hitler, and that enables people to be radicalized, and it inspires them, it enables them, it motivates them to go ahead and do some of these heinous acts. Now, we are hardcore believers of free speech, right? But there's one exception, one notable exception to free speech, and that is incitement to violence. That is, even our forefathers understood that there must be an exemption from free speech, and that is incitement to violence. So if you're motivating and convincing other people to go and commit violent acts, that is completely against and negates the rights of and the protections provided by the First Amendment. So when we have senior politicians and media people who are nonstop inciting the average Joe that every guardsman they see is a terrorist, ironic, isn't it? Or is a fascist or is a Nazi, then they could be liable for inciting to violence. And I think this is one thing that we have to put the boot down on, because we're all for free speech. We are not for incitement for violence. And this is something we saw a lot with the Free Palestine protests as well. They were straight out inciting to violence. And then later you see violence against Jewish members in communities nearby. That is not protected by the First Amendment. And we shouldn't convince ourselves that it is, because our forefathers were smarter than that.
It's unfortunate that there are people that are being so reckless. Senator Mark Kelly, who served.
Former fighter pilot, former astronaut.
Yeah. Now he's a Democrat from Arizona. And he was one of several in a video basically suggesting that troops, and by extension police and everyone else, shouldn't follow unlawful orders. There's an investigation now been launched into his conduct, because even when you leave the military, if you're receiving retirement pay, you're still bound to some basic requirements as to how you conduct yourself. They could theoretically recall him to active duty and put him before a military tribunal and court-martial him, do whatever it's not likely that something will get that far, but it is likely that something will happen, and I think that there should. It's being
More likely they
reckless.
will remove some of his ranks and maybe dishonorably discharge him, stuff like that.
The argument he's going to say, I'm acting as a politician and I have free speech and so forth.
Yeah.
But it is unbecoming of someone to suggest, because it's not that necessarily the actual people receiving the orders won't obey them, but the general public is hearing this, and it's giving the false impression that unlawful orders are being sent out and disseminated from the commander-in-chief and from the higher-ups in the military. And when questioned, they can't name one unlawful order. It's a sort of thing to stir the pot. And as you said, unfortunately, stuff like that does create a situation where there might be someone that's a little unhinged that's going to go and take some sort of action because they think they're being told that there's some criminal conduct happening by these people in uniform, and they're going to go out and be the hero and stop it, which is obviously ridiculous. These things need to stop, and it's obvious that they're saying it for a purpose, not accurate. They're just
it's endangering the lives of the people who volunteer and serve to protect us, and that is disgusting. And we should put a stop to that. Whether those directly influence the attack here, again, it could be that this attacker had a whole other set of motives. But the fact is that this is not the first time, like we saw with Charlie Kirk. This regular incitement to violence does incite people and cause violence. And therefore, when there are obvious cases of that, it should be prosecuted. I don't know what the situation exactly what Mark Kelly said, and if that wasn't necessarily exactly incitement for violence,
it's a video they put out basically reminding people not to follow unlawful orders. And it's
I think the claim there is basically to tell them to not follow orders, which is to betray the U.S. government and the U.S. military, which is, I forget the terminology.
It's certainly against the conduct of someone who's been in the military that's still bound to have a certain conduct. Bottom line is, it's nonsense. Bottom line is, this is the kind of stuff that, like we heard on that MS Now, formerly MSNBC, essentially trying to say it's normal that people might not be happy with some of the things that you see going. So all that being said, I think we just need to keep an eye on this, and people need to just take a breath and respect the people that are out there just trying to do their jobs. And admittedly, DC has seen a great reduction in violent crime. I think murders are down, homicides down like 60%, other crimes down like 30%. So there's a very positive outcome from these men and women in uniform being on the streets.
Definitely.
Listen, this isn't the only thing, obviously, that's keeping people up at night. All the travel that's happening during the holiday season between now and the early part of next year, people have been asking us a lot about aviation safety in a different light. There was a very significant crash that happened from a UPS cargo plane. And people are like, oh my gosh, can this happen to me? Like, how did that happen? A lot of people aren't getting all the details. I think we should touch upon that briefly to go over what we do know and to help straighten out some of the maybe misinformation that's out there about this. I'd like to play a piece on that next so we can have a little dialogue.
We have breaking news. A new NTSB report is shedding light on what may have caused a deadly Louisville plane crash earlier this month. Newly released photos show the moment the left engine detached from the UPS cargo plane shortly after takeoff. The report says the engine pylon showed signs of fatigue cracks and overstress failure. That crash killed 14 people and injured 23. ABC transportation reporter Sam Sweeney's here with more on that. Hi, Sam. So what's the latest here?
Diane, those pictures are pretty incredible. The surveillance video from the airport shows that engine ripping off of that plane just seconds after lifting off from the ground. You can see it there. And then the engine goes up into the air over the wing. A fire happens, and then there's parts all strewn across the runway. That jet only made it 30 feet into the air. It cleared the airport fence, but then it hit those warehouses. And now the NTSB is looking at the metal, the fatigued metal on those planes, saying it showed signs of cracking. And that's why they took such quick measures to ground other similar planes in this fleet to make sure they also don't have the same type of cracking. There was a very similar crash that killed more than 200 people back in 1979 on this same plane, and the NTSB points that out in their report. This is just the preliminary report. It could be up to a year before we have the final probable cause.
All right, Sam Sweeney, thank you.
It's so devastating. 14. I wasn't aware. I was just assuming it was just the pilots and stuff. I thought I heard that it injured some people on the ground, but 14 dead? That's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I think the only positive thing is that the number of this wasn't a passenger jet; it was a cargo jet, or else again,
Yeah.
what happened in 1979. We had hundreds of
Thankfully, the
people.
DC-10s, they're not really used as passenger jets anymore, at least not in the US.
Right. So in 79, it was an American Airlines flight, I think 191. And at the time, it was discovered that, so the engines on this is a tri-engine. It has an engine in the tail at the back. It has engines on each wing. And the engines under the wings have these things called pylons that hold the engines in place. And it was discovered back then that the manufacturer's requirements or recommendations for maintenance and removal and installation of these engines wasn't properly followed. So they changed how they did that. There was a maintenance issue that they identified. And for all these years since 79, we haven't had this type of problem. The question then is, can it be that pylon structure that holds the engines in place eventually fails? And they do have inspections that are required of these things, but it's not every month or maybe not even every year. So the problem is that the engine literally, if you think about how these engines work, they're slightly in front of the wing and they're pulling the plane forward. It's like they're dragging the plane forward through the air. So if it detaches, you get what you see here. Where
the engine goes upwards.
And then breaks off completely and it's just up in the air. The problem, and you can fly on two engines. They'll be able to.
Or even on one engine, yeah.
The problem is they didn't just lose one engine, they lost two engines. And the reason is that in this type of scenario, as the engine is now in flames and is ripping off of the aircraft, pieces of that engine go flying and it gets
right
sucked
into the back
other
engine.
So that's what happened. The other engine sucked that in. The plane was barely above the ground. They were going too fast already to stop. By the time they knew what was going on, it was too late. The plane.
Yeah, in theory, if they had proper elevation, they could probably just fly in a single engine, but not. And it could be that the flying debris also caused some ruptures to the structure of the plane, and these are very old planes as well.
So if you see the massive flames, so one of the other problems is, so during that phase of flight when you're taking off, the plane is the heaviest it's ever going to be because it's full of fuel. That's why if they have to divert, you'll see planes will go and after you have to dump fuel before they land because landing heavy is a problem. So the plane is fully loaded with fuel, has all the cargo it's transporting, and it needs all that thrust to get off the ground. Problem number one, that's the most dangerous time that this can happen. And number two, there are fuel tanks also even like in smaller planes. So when that rips off, you have this fuel that's just pouring out of the plane. And once it catches fire, you get what you see there. So the pilots couldn't have done anything. There was nothing to do from everything we can see. It was a failure, a failure of the structure that held that one engine in place. And now we have to understand why that is. And out of abundance of caution, all of these aircraft, which are basically in the United States, operated by UPS and FedEx for cargo, have been grounded. It's unlikely, I think, that any of these aircraft are going to fly again. I think they've had their useful life, and I think this type of disaster is so significant that they may not be flown in the future. But we will learn something from this, and it's really tragic. The message here is this is not the type of thing you would see in the aircraft you're flying now as a passenger, because these types of aircraft are not being used for that. And it doesn't mean that there won't be some other problem in the future, but the game is to always stay ahead of these things, catch them before they become a real problem. And this time, it wasn't caught.
And fighter planes have ejection seats, which means that if there's something catastrophic like this, even very close to the ground, they can pull a knob, and they're basically little rocket engines that shoot their seat up, and then a parachute opens up, and they can basically fly out of the way and land hopefully somewhere safe. But these transport planes don't have ejection seats, so it means that the pilots really couldn't do anything. It's just devastating.
Yeah, and it's a couple of things. Number one, the ejection seats are not intended for flight that low to the ground, 30 feet above the ground.
They could. They've been tested, though. And
it's not the ideal. Second thing is, there's no pilot on this earth that is going to put themselves and their safety ahead of the people on the ground. Okay, a fighter jet is flying typically. That's usually a situation where you're over the ocean, you're this or that. Of course, try to save yourself too. But at the end of the day, you fly the plane into the ground. You do everything until the last moment. So respect for the pilots. They obviously were doing everything they possibly could. And it's not about
the very last moment.
the safety of the people on the ground, the safety of passengers if they're in the aircraft is always paramount for any pilot. And there's just nothing they could have done. And it's just very sad. But again, the message, it's not the type of aircraft that you'll be boarding to go anywhere. I think Bolivia, there's maybe a couple other countries still have these. I would imagine they're going to ground their aircraft too. But
they usually follow the FAA.
Right. They're not being used as passenger aircraft in the United States. So just
basically fly to your holidays without worry.
Yeah,
unless it's a Boeing, and then you can worry just a little bit.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation, but tongue in cheek.
We've covered that in the past. And also for anybody who may have missed it, we recently released a phenomenal In Focus about aviation where you interviewed some really great people and some phenomenal pilots and had some really interesting conversations. So if you hadn't checked that out, you should. And we may have another similarly interesting conversation like that in the future as well. Joe is extremely knowledgeable on the entire aviation industry, and it's very interesting to have your insights. Thank you.
Yeah, we just want to make sure people have the right information. A lot of times there's
Exactly.
a lot of cross wires out there when you listen to what people are saying. The thing is to be worried about the things you should be worried about and not being worried about things that.
Exactly. Yeah. People always fear of things that are very irrational. So people are afraid of lightning strikes, for example, even though like hundreds or thousands of people a year are struck by lightning and they usually actually make it out fine, surprisingly. It could kill you, but if there was somebody who was like hit by lightning like 12 times and still walked around to tell the tale. So people have a lot of very irrational fears. There's a joke that goes that people were at a ceremony for somebody who passed and the man died from a heart attack. And it was like 70% of people who have a heart attack die or something. I'm just making up the stats. And 90% of people have fear of public speaking. So people would prefer to be in the casket than the one to give the eulogy.
Exactly. There you go. And
we always have to consider our fear and rationalize
it. I was very shy once upon a time, but no longer. And it's when I moved to Florida, I found out that Florida is one of the top places for lightning strikes in the United States. And I was curious why, and someone was giving this meteorological explanation. And I finally concluded the actual real reason is there's more sinners down here, more people deserve to be struck by lightning. But that being said, there are other things in the news that we've been following, obviously, and that some people thought would be catastrophic and may or may not be. It's left to be seen. And this includes the mayoral race in New York City, which now has been won by an individual who is openly socialist, has been accused of being communist, and many people felt the world was going to come to an end if he got in. I certainly didn't support putting someone that has socialistic inclinations into New York City.
And a jihadist, just cherry on top. Pretty much 20-something years exactly after 9/11. So,
all that being said, let's take a look at kind of the sort of spectrum from pre-election to where we are now. Let's take a look.
I think that if Mamdani wins with a coalition of voters who have been not all that excited about the Democratic Party over the last few years, I think that's a good thing for the Democrats. And I think if you're in a purple district, say you disagree with some of the things that he does and use that to establish your independent cred.
You make it sound like he's a little more mainstream than I think he is. The issue now that Andrew Cuomo is bringing up in New York is that he is a Ugandan citizen. Uganda is a country where they kill homosexuals.
So somebody who is a dual citizen can't be mayor of New York, or?
I would renounce, if I was the dual citizen with a country whose policy, the government policy was we kill homosexuals, yeah, I would renounce that citizenship. I don't, and to not to, and he also,
I think that is buying into a fear framework that is not good. It's not good for the country. It's not good for the country.
You shouldn't be afraid of that.
I think the way that Cuomo is closing out this race and really race baiting and really leaning in on
that's
what
not right.
It's not
right. No, you know what? Just because
I don't think that's good for the country.
I understand, but just because something is done by people in Africa doesn't mean it's always okay. But you said race baiting. It has nothing to do with race.
Oh, I'm talking about what Cuomo's doing, suggesting that Mamdani couldn't be a leader in a terror situation if he were mayor of New York and, God forbid, something else like 9/11
Well, he did campaign the terrorists.
He did say, but Cuomo was pretty clear, I thought, in the way he talked about that, in a way that I thought was ugly.
He campaigned this week with a guy who was an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and served as a character witness for Omar Abdel Rahman, the terrorist who organized it. So Sarah Palin used to say, Obama palled around the terrorists, which was bullshit. But
the mayor that has taken over New York City is a Muslim that's going to take down the city that never sleeps, the city of life's dreams, this city that our ancestors brought forth in prosperity and greatness and liberty. This city will turn into a forbidden place of darkness. The blood, sweat, and tears that the city of New York was built on will turn into a virtual refugee shelter for the radical Muslim ideology.
Talking about free buses, you're talking about free childcare. Can you do that without raising taxes?
I think you can do that, and I think you have to raise taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers who make more than $1 million a year, and you do that by raising taxes by them 2%. And then you also increase the corporate tax of New York State to match that of New Jersey. So that takes us from about 7.25 to about 11.5%, which is what we see in New Jersey. These things together raise about $9 billion, which more than pays for our economic agenda.
It's just the city government. That kind of a tax increase is going to require the state as well, including the governor, Kathy Hochul. Is she on board?
I'm proud to have Governor Kathy Hochul's endorsement and the endorsement of our agenda, specifically universal child care.
We know that Mamdani does want to tax the rich more, bring it up about 2%. He can't do that on his own. You've previously said that you wouldn't be raising taxes. Have you reconsidered that stance?
No, I would say one energetic rally does not get me to change my positions, I assure you. But I do hear people's voices. I process what everybody says, but I'm also have to balance governing this state and making sure that those people who are actually the reason we have a generous, supportive budget that helps lift people up, it's their revenues that we tax. 1.5% of New Yorkers cover about a third of our budget. That's enormous. I'm concerned about outmigration of people who are the ones who are supporting our budget. I cannot make up for that with middle.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Overnight, President Trump lavishing praise on New York City's mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani after months of trading attacks and insults.
I think you're going to have hopefully a really great mayor. The better he does, the happier I am.
Just weeks ago, Trump had warned the 34-year-old Democratic socialist would destroy the city. But now the two men smiling, joking, and shaking hands in the Oval Office.
I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually.
Mamdani says they focused on the issue that fueled his victory and even drew some Trump voters, the cost of living.
The 8.5 million people who call our city their home, who are struggling to afford life in the most expensive city in the United States of America.
For months, Trump branded Mamdani as an extremist, but not anymore.
I met with a man who's a very rational person. I met with a man who really wants to see New York be great again.
Reporters pressing Mamdani on calling Trump a fascist, but in a stunning moment, the president jumping in to help.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay, you can just say yes.
Okay.
It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
And the billionaire president asked if he'd be comfortable living in New York under Mamdani.
Yeah, I would. I really would. Especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought.
But guys, the big question is this: do these warm feelings last? Because remember, it was just weeks ago when the president was threatening to withhold federal funding and to send federal troops into New York City if Mamdani won the election. And that meeting yesterday focused more on issues of shared concern like affordability, not their deep differences around crime and immigration. But no question, that was a shocking scene, and Trump making it clear he not only respects but even admires Mamdani's political success, Rachel.
Yeah, many people were very surprised to see how that played out. All right, Selena Wang in Washington for us. Selena, thank you.
What are your thoughts on the warm White House interaction?
Yeah, so let's roll back a little bit because I have a bunch to rant about. I hope you don't mind.
We do have a time limit, but yeah, go ahead.
It's funny, in that initial interview, it was very interesting, but you can tell that the journalist or whoever was sitting there, she was like so infected by the woke mind virus, and she was like, but please don't make him look bad. It was a little ironical. I think they mentioned that Mamdani is a leader. Mamdani, I wish he was, because the greatest business city in the entire history of humankind requires a successful business leader or a successful person who understands commerce and industry to lead it, right? This is the city with so much potential, and it's been losing a lot of that recently. And this definitely won't help because Mamdani has no background of leadership whatsoever. Even though he tries to claim and to seem like he's an average Joe and he came from nothing and he built his way up and he was born in Uganda and he's got Indian parents. His mother is a huge Indian producer in Bollywood, very wealthy. And his father is an elite professor in Cornell, I think, of like very socialist Middle Eastern studies, something pretty radical. So he was born with a silver, maybe gold spoon in his mouth. He never worked for a living. He tried to be a rapper because his mother could produce really nice rap videos for him for free, but that kind of tanked. And he said some pretty radical things when he was rapping, but that's what rap is all about. And then out of nowhere, from a unsuccessful rapper, he pivoted to run for I think it was the state assembly, and he won because he is a phenomenal speaker and he's very charismatic. He's very entertaining. He's got a beautiful smile, although maybe overuses it a little creepy, but he definitely has some kind of warm embrace and he knows how to talk to people, tell them what they want to hear. So he's very good at that. And he won that. But even as a politician, he was the least politician to like ever show up on the job. The only time he showed up is to pass some radical bill, the one radical bill he was co-sponsored or anything. But even as a politician, he basically sucked. Like he didn't show up for work. So he has failed at basically everything he's done. So calling him a leader is really pushing it. And the really sad part is he has said very radical things, and he does support very radical things like globalize the Intifada, which is rampant murder of innocent people and violent insurrection, I guess would be a pretty relevant term, and many other things. He basically supports Hamas, even though he won't openly say so. And he's regularly befriending terrorists, a lot of them, and radical jihadists. So we saw that he met with a guy who people don't realize that the World Trade Center was actually attacked twice, not once. Twice by terrorists. Talk about New York learning its lesson, right? In 1993, it was attacked too. And he basically went ahead and kissed the hands of that terrorist. The first place he went to, the first public gathering and event he went to after winning, the mayor was some radical imams gathering in some mosque. And they said pretty radical things right there. But unfortunately, I am afraid that he may be successful. Now, communism is never successful. In the long run, he will never be successful. The question is, some things that he is mentioning do make sense, especially in very kind of liberal cities like New York, and probably should have been passed a while ago. For example, we've been discussing free transportation. There is very few places around the world where public transportation even breaks even, let alone makes a profit. It is almost always almost completely subsidized by the government. So the $2 they charge people for tickets doesn't get them very far. And basically covering that isn't much of a big deal. So making public transportation free is possible, even plausible. Yes, it'll put the city budget back a lot, but that is possible. Another thing is universal childcare. And I don't necessarily have anything against that. The government pays for primary school and high school. Why do parents have to pay for those first few years of life, especially if they have a job? It's just really hard and very expensive to send children to private programs for that. Just like we basically subsidize the rest of the education, kind of makes sense to subsidize that. So I think that there are some things that he can do that can make him very popular. And if the economy of New York doesn't collapse fast enough, suddenly we can see him running for president in 2028 or 2032 or something. So this could be a pretty problematic situation. But I was curious to hear from you. What do you think about Hochul and the relationship? Because Hochul is pretty radical as well, and she isn't the most intelligent of bean counters. And it's funny, she mentioned that she listens, she didn't make up her mind because she listens to what voters want, and she takes that into consideration, basically saying she panders to the crowd. But what do you think of Hochul and their possible relationship?
So I think she's just being pragmatic. She's a politician more so than he is. So she knows what she needs to be able to do to thread the needle. She's obviously stated, just like in the clip we shared, she gets that she doesn't want to scare away the top tier of the New York elite because they have options. And most of them want to be there as well. May not be their only home, but they want to be there and investing in the city and so forth. And the reality is, you lose that, it's going to cause a major hurt to the state, not just the city. So she's going to put herself
of the budget.
She's going to put herself first. She's not going to go and sacrifice what she needs to accomplish because she wants to make this guy look good. So there's going to be a give and take. I think that with regards to free transportation, I mean, there are places like in Miami, we have the Metro Mover. It's a little tram sort of thing. Miami Beach, I think, has a free shuttle service. There are things like that. But New York is a very big city. So to just basically make it seem like all transportation is going to be free, good luck with that. And one of the other things is, if it's free, does that mean people could just waltz in? There's no accountability, no turnstiles, no nothing? Because already we've seen what happens when people are just able to flood the subway system without having to even try to at least pay something or have some sort of interruption, that they just want waltzing in there. We'll have to see how that all plays out. Talk's cheap. Politicians will say what they need to say to get elected. But shifting gears to the White House, listen, I think what Trump did was, I think, quite amusing. He basically flipped everything and essentially, hey, I'll work with this guy. Hey, he's a pretty smart guy. Basically putting all the pressure on Mamdani. He's, look, hey, yeah, this guy should do okay. So guess if there's a failure or a problem, guess whose fault it's going to be? No one can point the finger at Trump saying that he wasn't helping the guy, or he was putting obstacles in his way, or interfering with things. He's, no, I'll help him. It'll all be good. And then see how it plays out. It's like the old adage of giving someone enough rope that they can hang themselves. It's like that. There's something to what happened, and everyone is shocked about it. And subsequent to that interview, Mamdani was asked again point blank, and he still says he stands by his thought that Trump is a fascist and a Nazi, and who knows what else, but definitely a fascist. And Trump isn't going to change what he believes either. It's just that if you think about it, who has Trump met with on the world stage that are dictators, this, that, authoritarian leaders? And he meets with
Kim Jong-un and Putin, and yeah.
He crossed over to meet the leader of North Korea. Okay,
Yeah.
so if he could do that in a civil manner, I guess it shouldn't be that much of a surprise that he can meet with the soon-to-be mayor of New York.
Yeah, I think that's a very pragmatic and a very thoughtful approach to analyzing it, because a lot of people are being offended and, oh, he's radical. But I think Trump is always, he gets along with everyone. As long as you can treat him nicely and throw him a few compliments, he will smile at you and he'll throw a whole lot of compliments back at you. Like, people assume that he's a mean person, and people call him that very regularly. But boy, can he give compliments, sometimes completely irrational compliments, but he knows how to make people feel good about themselves, especially when they kiss his ass. So it really works both ways. If somebody attacks him, boy, can he viciously go back at them. But if somebody's kissing his ass and talking nicely at him, saying nice things about him, then he can be really nice. But Trump mentioned that he's very rational. And just to quickly touch on that, in Islam, there's a concept called taqiyya, which basically means you're allowed to lie to further the cause. So basically, he was very brilliant, where watching that interview, he was basically, every time there was a tough question, he basically responded, what's important to me is to make the quality of life for the people of New York better and to reduce the cost of living in New York. That's a perfect answer, right? Is it true? I don't know. With communist policies, he's not going to get anywhere near that, right? But he can sideline everything that he disagrees with Trump about and just say the nice things, and it definitely works. And the one last note is that Trump loves success. Whether you succeed in a good way or in a bad way, you're a tyrant or you're democratically elected. If you're successful, Trump sees in that success something to aspire to or to learn from. And we should all learn from success of all types. So I think that's an important message as well.
Yep. Even the same thing in sports, an adversary wins or what have you. You have to acknowledge and give him a nod for the win. And all this is on the tail end of a lot of things that have been happening, including the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Let's just take a sweep of some of the other news items that have been in the news cycle recently. We'll touch upon those and move on to other world events. Let's take a look.
You're blaming the Republicans for the shutdown, but in point of fact, it's the Democrats in the Senate who are refusing to vote for the clean continuing resolution to fund the government for 7 weeks. Now, just as a point of fact, the way that we have always covered shutdowns is that the party that is not voting for the CR, the continuing resolution to fund the government, is the party that is blocking the government funding and is responsible for the shutdown. That's how we did it the last time in 2018, 2019. That's the time we did before that during the Obama administration. It's your party that is refusing in the Senate that is refusing to vote for the continuing resolution.
I think my party crossed a line of now
putting 42 million Americans with their SNAP benefits and making flying less safe and that kinds of chaos and not paying our military. That was a red line for me that I can't cross as a Democrat. And I think that's been described the country over the party. And now that I think that's been the truth throughout it. And it's only wrong to shut our government down. And I'm relieved. But the people now that are going to get paid and fed and millions of Americans, they're going to be flying now. That's going to be made more safe and restored.
How does a $20 billion bailout of Argentina help Americans? You're the president's point person on that. Can you explain to those here who are feeling the pinch, including America's farmers, why the United States is helping out Argentina?
Do you know what a swap line is?
It's currency swap, yes.
Yes, but what is that?
You're the Treasury Secretary.
Yes, but why would you call it a bailout?
That is how...
In most bailouts, you don't make money. The U.S. government made money. We used our financial balance sheet to stabilize the government. One of our great allies in Latin America, during an election, the president there won in a landslide. The government's going to make money, and I would rather use peace through economic strength than have to be shooting at narco boats coming offshore if the government collapsed. We have a generational opportunity in Latin America to create allies. We just saw an election in Bolivia. We're probably going to see an election in Colombia. We've seen them in Ecuador. We're going to see them in Chile. So by stabilizing the economy there and making a profit, then that's a very good deal for the American people. And there's a lot we could have been doing for American farmers, but Democrats closed the government.
So is the president losing Republicans?
No. Look, this is still Donald Trump's Republican Party, and we can see it here. It's like a rock, to quote Bob Seger. Take a look here. Republicans who approve of Trump. 6 months ago, it was 87%. Now, hello, it's the same number. It's 87%. He has not lost any support among Republicans compared to 6 months ago. As I said at the beginning, he's like a rock. He's like a rock. The Republican base is sticking by Donald Trump at this point in time.
It really is interesting to watch his overall approval rating go down, but see this be completely constant here.
It is among independents. It is not among Republicans.
Okay, so how does this compare to past presidents in a second term?
Yeah, okay. I think this gives the game away, which is Donald Trump. If you look at 21st century presidents' own party approval at this point in term two, who leads the pack? It's Donald John Trump. 87% of Republicans approve of Donald John Trump. You go back to 2013, 78% of Democrats supported Barack Obama, and it was 78% of Republicans who supported George W. Bush back in 2005 at this point. So Donald Trump has the biggest highest own party approval of any president who served their entire second term in the 21st century.
You could look at this.
Outrage in Chicago after video captures a mother and her 9-year-old son being harassed and then badly beaten by grade school children while walking near a school. We talked to two leaders of that Chicago community in just a moment, but first, let's go to Mike Tobin live there with the details. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. Parents and, frankly, people all over Chicago are now horrified and outraged at this video that's not going viral. It has gone viral, of a mother and a 9-year-old son who were mobbed and beaten by a group of school-age bullies. Now, the video is a bit brutal, so be ready for that, but it shows this mother and the aggressiveness of the kids increasing as Korshwanda Hatter tries to protect her son. Finally, this mob of youngsters started to strike Korshwanda and her 9-year-old son. They were both knocked to the ground, and the beating continued.
So a lot of stuff going on, and on top of that, just youth violence clip, which I mean, I can't imagine kids back when I was a kid doing that to an adult. It's just unheard of. It's just completely out of
Back when you were a kid, the kid would get spanked or receive some pretty severe punishment for not acting properly in school.
Yeah,
whether at home or in school or both, but kids would more likely to follow the rules. I think that's just indicative of what happens when you release criminals and when there's an environment of crime in a city like Chicago, which unfortunately is supported by Pritzker and the rest of the leadership there.
Right, and we didn't put in there, but there was also another woman now set on fire in a subway, this time in Chicago, by a repeat offender. It's been arrested 70-something times, and The last time that the prosecutors were trying to keep him in jail, the judge said, no, we can't keep everyone in jail just because, and I'm paraphrasing, but just because the prosecutor wants us to. And this guy had repeatedly violated, was on an ankle monitor, was not always where he was supposed to be, bought gasoline, so it was premeditated, made his way onto a subway car and public transit and picked this woman, apparently randomly, poured gas on her as she ran off, chased after her, and set her on fire, which she then was, and I'm sure now still is in critical condition or is certainly severely injured from that craziness. And there's a lot of that going on in the world. You would think if the politicians are running wild, saying crazy things and not thinking about their constituents, if the politicians in these cities are allowing complete lawlessness, these are signs of bad things to come unless...
And moral decay.
Yeah, no, it's just insanity. So these are some of the stories we're seeing in the news. Obviously, I think people have had enough of this. You don't want to walk down the street and have someone randomly attack you. And now on the heels of that, we have Guardsmen being attacked.
Exactly.
In our capital.
Yeah.
So it's...
Chicago desperately needs Guardsmen too. And then what if they're attacked there? You know what I mean? We don't want war.
Oh, absolutely. And the response to what happened in DC is 500 more being deployed.
Good.
It's like they're not backing down. It's okay. I guess we need even more to watch the backs of the other ones that are there. It is what it is, but this needs to stop. We don't want to live in some crazy lawless country. There needs to be some basic decorum, proper existence for the citizens to be able to safely walk down the street.
And we've discussed this in the past that if you don't release anybody who has 3 or 5 or 10 at least at most previous convictions for violent assaults, then you reduce crime by 99%. Like huge percent of almost all violent crime is caused by repeat offenders. Some people belong in jail, whether they have mental illness or they've been radicalized by certain drugs that kind of made them go crazy, or some people are just violent, and if you enable it, they'll just continue with their rampant violence nonstop. And some people must be in jail forever until their very last day with no chance of parole, because if they go out, they will be a repeat offender. Repeat recidivism is just extremely high. Don't release serial violent criminals out of jail. It's just a stupid mistake.
The other thing we brought up on this topic is you go to a restaurant or a bar, what have you, someone gets served a few drinks too many and winds up in an accident. Guess who's responsible? Not just the person in the accident, but the person...
Barman, ridiculously. Yeah.
The bar owner, the general manager, the server or bartender, et cetera, et cetera. How is it that the court system can go and keep releasing these people who clearly shouldn't be out in society, release them, and there's no consequences for them?
Yeah,
I mean,
there
maybe
must be consequences.
If there were consequences, they'd be disbarred, they would do jail time, whatever it is. They'd have civil liability for some of this when it comes to dangerous people just being released to the streets. Maybe that's what we need. These people shouldn't be immune to any sort of prosecution if the way that they're acting is not truly impartial and it's completely reckless. At some point, that's insane. And I think that's what people are getting fed up with. And people that have been subjected to the criminal justice system start seeing just the way the problems with it. Victims and victims advocates will tell you all day long that it's not an easy right to be a victim when you're confronted with having to deal with the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and what did you think about Jack Taper basically point blank blaming the Democrats for the shutdown and right on CNN? It was a little surprising, to be honest, no?
More. So Jake Tapper and other CNN hosts are starting to actually act like journalists and TV hosts and starting to actually say things a little more mainstream, around the middle. Much unlike MS Now, formerly MSNBC, that's full way out on off the left end. You can't even measure it anymore. Saying crazy things like we saw earlier. CNN has on occasion been saying some pretty moderate things. And CNN used to be pretty middle of the road and used to actually report the news. Maybe they're trying to test the waters and see if reporting the news and not just going and making stuff up, which we'll cover in a minute, because that still exists, obviously, in the media. But maybe they're starting to move towards that sort of goal. We certainly applaud that. And that's why we do find ourselves often using clips from CNN that are actually trustworthy, believable, and somewhat representative.
Like we saw from our favorite pollster over there on CNN, Trump's approval, at least is a litmus test for how much people trust and rely on the legacy media. because Republicans don't trust legacy media. They're a lot of times on X, on podcasts, on other platforms. So they're inoculated against the brainwashing of legacy media. Whereas Democrats are much more trustworthy of legacy media, and therefore and independents as well, their support for Trump has just been dropping and dropping. So it really shows, it really is a litmus test for how much people trust media. And that's very interesting as well, I think, showing how the podcast world is really at least influencing the Republican side.
Yeah, oddly, someone is still watching that MS Now. Someone's watching it, maybe 3 people, but someone's actually still watching that. That's what's motivating them to keep reported things that aren't accurate, or to make stuff up, or to say outlandish statements. And
like CNN, like you said, are starting to moderate. And now we see that CBS was bought up by Paramount, and they put Barry Weiss there to manage it from the Free Press. She's a phenomenal journalist. So we may see that once there's pressure, especially financial pressure from X, from free speech movements on these companies, they're forced to pivot back to the middle. And that's a very good thing for us all.
Yeah, I agree. Let's take a look at another story that's dominated the news cycle for quite some time now. And it's back at the top. And this has to do with the Epstein case and the files and so forth. Let's take a peek at some of that and the push now to release that information, all the information that's there. Let's take a look at this. And it starts off with an interesting clip from Lisa Phillips, who is one of the survivors from the whole Epstein Island thing and all that. And she has a podcast and she's talking about him. Very interesting how she talks about him. Almost surprising. But I guess what I'll take from that is that he certainly was a very charming guy. And then there's a recent ad that's been put out to encourage the release of the files. Let's take a look.
Attending the best parties and living a fulfilling, joyous life. So one day, my agent called with exciting news. I had booked a magazine cover and a 6-page story. So the crew and the other model, she was an incredibly beautiful blonde Polish girl, and I flew to Tortola in the British West Indies for the shoot. We had an amazing time, but the photographer, he made me uncomfortable with his unwanted advances. It was unfortunately a common issue in the modeling business at the time. And desperate to escape the photographer's attention, I eagerly agreed and accepted when the other model invited me to spend our free time, a free day, on a friend of hers' private island. She assured me her friend Jeffrey was trustworthy and he was super wonderful to her. So dinner time arrives and I'm seated at this long table with 3 other girls from the day. We're feasting on fresh seafood and talking and laughing and truly enjoying getting to know each other. It was a really fun time. Not long after that, a handsome man with a charming smile walks up. He introduces himself as Jeffrey, shakes my hand and kisses my cheek and sits down right next to me. For hours, Jeffrey focuses attention on all of us, but it was mostly on me. He was incredibly charming and he had a sharp, witty humor, really interesting. Jeffrey asked a lot of questions that night, the kind that no man usually bothers to ask you. Stuff about my childhood, how I grew up, where I lived, intimate questions. But I still felt really safe by his questions.
I suffered so much pain.
So much pain. So much pain. I suffered so much pain. I was 14 years old. I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
This is me. This was me.
This is me.
When I met Jeffrey Epstein. This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
There are about 1,000 of us.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jesse Mitchell. This is CBS News 24/7. We are following breaking news. President Trump just announced on Truth Social he has signed the bill requiring the Justice Department to release the Epstein files. The DOJ now has 30 days to make the documents related to the late sex offender public. Lawmakers passed the bill earlier this week in near unanimous votes in both the Senate and the House. Political pressure on this issue has been building for months. After the House passed the bill yesterday, the Senate quickly followed up using a process called unanimous consent, meaning there was not a traditional vote and no changes were made. The president faced pressure to sign the bill from members of his own party who called for more transparency.
I think there was like 30 days to produce. DOJ has directed that the documents be released. And we'll see what's going to be released. Ultimately, everyone wants to see what's there. It is interesting. The argument is if there was something against Donald Trump, it would have come out to prevent him from becoming president. So it's highly unlikely that there's any big bombshell there. But will there be other information? Everyone knows that prior President Clinton traveled numerous times on the plane and to the island and so forth. So it'll be interesting what actually comes out. And there's been a lot of talk of stuff that was planted intermingled with this stuff to muddy the waters. So it'll be something we all want to look at, and we'll keep following exactly what's being said. It certainly is important to get as much information out there as possible. And there are a couple of people that know and have seen all this information before. They just can't.
Yeah, he was very charming, like we see the woman say. Basically a psychopath. They can use extremely sophisticated charm in truly evil ways, and he definitely was one who used it that way. And it's very sad. The question about the files release, like you mentioned, is there have been a lot of administrations with these files. Like I said, 5 administrations. It was probably cleansed from each way from Wednesday. So how much of what will be released is still relevant or interesting? That's the real question, because we could just get a really whitewashed version. It is good. There have been a lot of revelations already. We basically know most of the people who were involved, and it's very clear that anybody who was involved with him before his first conviction, in 2014 or something, he was a nice guy who donated to everybody, and he was friendly with everybody. Basically, anybody in the New York social scene knew him and was friends with him, right? So it doesn't necessarily indicate anybody, but anybody who remained close friends with him even after his convictions, that is where you have to become pretty suspicious. And we just saw in the UK that Prince Andrew has been revoked from the title princehood, and he is now just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor if you search him up on Google. We are seeing the cascading effects of this, and hopefully it will cause less situations of this to occur again in the future.
Yeah, and some of the things that have come out include collaboration after Epstein's initial conviction with Democratic officials Epstein trying to bring Trump down, because Trump was always believed by Epstein to be the person that outed everything he was doing. And so he had it out for Trump. And that way it would not be a shocker that things were put in there that someday could be used against Trump, even if they weren't factual. But Epstein was no longer Trump's best friend after Trump removed him and revoked his membership in Mar-a-Lago and all this other stuff. It certainly makes for an interesting story. Maybe one day there'll be an unbiased documentary on all of this. But for the
we'll
time
see what
being,
happens in 30 days.
We'll see what else comes out. We're all, of course, interested. I guess shifting gears, you mentioned the UK. Let's look around the world, some other news that's been in the headlines, and we can talk about that.
Since last month, the U.S. military has been blowing up speedboats in the waters off Venezuela in what it calls a counter-narcotics operation. But the growing military buildup in the region suggests there may be another target: Venezuela's dictator.
If I was Maduro, I'd head to Russia or China right now.
Because
his days are numbered.
We began almost 3 weeks ago with a foundational document that we socialized and ran by both sides and with input from both sides. And one of the things that happens when you've been involved in this now for 10 months is you get a pretty good sense of what the priorities and the red lines and the important issues are for both sides. And so that allowed us to create a foundational document, which has been an ongoing working document. In fact, over the last 96 hours or more, there's been extensive engagement with the Ukrainian side, including our Secretary of the Army and others, being on the ground in Kyiv, meeting with relevant stakeholders across the Ukrainian political spectrum in the legislative branch and the executive branch and the military and others to further narrow these points. We arrived here today with one goal, and the goal was to take what 28 points or 26 points, depending on which version as it continued to evolve, and try to narrow the ones that were open items. And we have achieved that today in a very substantial way. Now, obviously, like any final agreement, they'll have to be agreed upon by the presidents, and there are a couple issues that we need to continue to work on. But I think the report today is that I think today was worthwhile. It was it is probably the most productive day we have had on this issue, maybe in the entirety of our engagement, but certainly in a very long time. But work remains.
A high-rise apartment complex was engulfed in flames. At least 44 people are confirmed dead. Hundreds more are missing. A number of people reportedly have been arrested. Holly Williams has the very latest.
The fire started this afternoon, jumping from one building to another, engulfing this high-rise complex, which was home to nearly 5,000. I watched it spread from Block 6 to Block 5, said this resident. It burned all the way without anyone hosing it down. This distraught man named Wong told reporters his wife was trapped inside. By the time night fell, it was an inferno, with more than 700 firefighters battling to control the flames, and one of them killed. The housing complex was under renovation, with parts of it covered in scaffolding made from bamboo, which appears to have helped the fire spread. In Shanghai in 2010, bamboo scaffolding also fueled this blaze, which killed more than 50 people. And here in the UK in 2017, flammable cladding acted like a wick, killing 72 in a government housing high-rise. That fire sparked a public outcry about safety standards. In Hong Kong, the fire department said some residents were unable to escape. They can't even begin to count all of the dead until they've extinguished the flames. Holly Williams, CBS News, London.
Stories. Crazy. 5,000 people living basically side by side in those different towers.
Yeah, it could be thousands of dead. Thousands. Yeah. Probably pretty likely, actually. It's just heartbreaking. So heartbreaking.
And I'm not a big fan of government overregulation and all this other stuff.
Fire regulation is important when it's not politicized and overdone and too corrupt to ever get approvals for. And sometimes it definitely goes too far very often. But it is especially, that is very important. And don't use bamboo scaffolding is a pretty decent takeaway now.
Yeah, common sense. Again, I think that, but as you could see, even in the UK, it happened previously that they had essentially flammable materials. So it's
in a government building, though, in government construction, public housing,
of course,
which
somebody somewhere was able to have very lax requirements. So this is the other side of the coin where, it's not about having overregulation, but you want some. And clearly something like this shouldn't happen. It's just inconceivable that buildings would be able to just have fire spread rampant like this from building to building. It's so many people living in tight quarters, but it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to watch. But look, the world, it's important for us to remember that we live in a big country here, but there's a big world around us and there's people being impacted in many ways. And we need to sometimes learn from what we're seeing elsewhere. Without a doubt, the story with Russia and Ukraine, Steve Witkoff is going to Moscow to discuss further, present what's been, I don't know if it's a 26 or 28 point plan now to end the war. It sounds like Ukraine is begrudgingly willing or accepting of relinquishing some territory. And the main thing they're looking for,
I wouldn't put it that way.
They have territory that isn't even in the control of Russia that Russia's asking to get. And they may be willing to release.
That's crazy.
The main thing that they want on the Ukraine side is some sort of safety assurances. And
I didn't really see those in the 20-point plan, unfortunately.
So, but it is one of the main things that will be offered. And the security is going to be provided apparently by Europe. So
that would be fine. But he mentioned that no accession to the EU or to NATO it basically is under the assumption that there will be no international forces on the ground, which basically means that there's no validity to it, because it seems like most of the basically punishment to Putin, if he violates anything, would be sanctions, basically re-implying the sanctions. Now, the sanctions aren't working now to stop Putin. So the threat of kind of, hey, if you give us trouble, we will put the sanctions back up, it's meaningless. And unfortunately, that was the majority of the stick towards Putin in this entire thing.
Yeah, the main thing is Russia does not want Ukraine to be a NATO country. And it seems that's pretty much been shelved, that they won't be a member of NATO. At this point, the discussion is that the alternative is that Europe would provide the protections, quasi Article 5 protection, so that they would, if something would happen, troops from the EU would actually go and defend and help defend the Ukraine. And the most important thing probably would be to augment the capabilities of the Ukrainian forces so that they would have a true, proper military, that they don't have all the resources that they really need. They're good at sending out some drones and doing a number of other things, but they need a lot more if they're going to defend themselves. Because in my view, I think Russia clearly in the future wants to come back and take another bite at the apple. So it's not like this ends forever. It ends for now. They gain some ground, things quiet down, they restock their armaments and so forth. And when there's an opportune time in the future, Russia, I think, will try to. Russia has visions of becoming the USSR again. It would love to be able to encompass a massive area. But there are realities that they're having to face that make it
that they suck at military attack. And they were like, Ukraine was considered one of the weakest militaries in the world, and they've failed colossally at taking Ukraine, thanks to the fact that Zelensky was very brave in day one and didn't run away. Because if he would have run away, then basically Kiev would have fallen and the rest of Ukraine with it. So that's why Putin definitely dislikes. And one of the provisions actually is that there will be free democratic elections in Ukraine to essentially replace Zelensky. The problem is, I really hope that the Europeans do deploy proper personnel, because that is the only thing that could work in theory, to deter the Russians from attacking again, at least for a decent amount of time. But in this 20-point plan that that was released supposedly from Trump, I didn't see that mentioned. So I really hope that is part of it. What do you think about the narco bombings and watching those ships go boom?
I think nothing else has worked. The diplomacy hasn't worked. And if they are bringing drugs...
Arresting people sure hasn't worked. Yeah, that doesn't scare the cartels one bit. Confiscating.
I'd say, let me just tell you, the cartels don't think twice about murdering people, beheading people, dismembering people while they're alive. I lived on the Mexican border for over a decade, and it was happening 15 minutes from my house across the border. Sometimes when you fight a fight, you have to fight it using, and this is certainly more humane than what the cartels are doing to people.
Yeah, the cartels are blowing up their enemies in the middle of busy city streets where a lot of innocent people are being injured. This is just boats out in the ocean. There's nobody to cry over. As long as they're really hitting the right targets, which I assume they are, because the U.S. military is very professional.
It's sending a message to other countries as well. That's really what this isn't just about Venezuela. But that being said, I think most people, the Biden administration as well, certainly the Trump administration, myself, and many people contend that Maduro never won the election.
True. 100%.
So I found it ironic that Biden was like, they didn't win the election, they used voting machines and whatever else, which was what happened, in my opinion, in 2020. I don't think Biden won in 2020. But ultimately, it was the same exact thing in the same exact voting machines that we use here in the United States. But Maduro is there because he says he won, and too bad, so sad if you don't listen to him. So he's an illegitimate leader, and it destabilizes everything. Again, that was one of the richest countries in the world, not just in Latin America. But if you live in Venezuela, you can't get access to food, medication, or almost anything because of what destruction has been done by this.
They destroyed the place.
Yeah, so I'm not, again,
that's
not
devastating
apologetic for anything. Anything we can do reasonably, we need to keep doing. That's my
and we wouldn't cry when the Maduro regime falls or is overthrown. No. Here's the important thing, though. I've been following open source intelligence for a long time, for many years, and I predicted the invasion of Ukraine when most people were saying it was just a training exercise, because the open intel was pretty obvious on that case. And right now, open source intelligence is indicating that the U.S., the amount of forces that they've amassed around Venezuela is not just to bomb some narco boats. That is definitely a preparation to overthrow the Maduro regime. Will it be an invasion? Not necessarily, but it does look like the U.S. will intervene at some point to overthrow the Maduro regime. And again, I'd be more than happy to celebrate that. But the government has been very kind of iffy, and they never clearly said it. They keep on claiming that it's just to fight the narco boats. Just from the amount of troops that have been amassed, it's not just to bomb narco boats. Does look like there's a serious preparation. Will the approval come? Will it actually happen? It's still early to say, but the military is ready to basically overthrow the Maduro regime.
Yep, and I'll look forward to that. Listen, it is what it is.
Exactly.
As long as we keep getting proper reporting and so forth, but that's not always the case in the media. There's been a bombshell out of the UK regarding the BBC, and it basically how they made up, contorted, and lied on various different stories, but the one that's probably the biggest has to do with President Trump during his run for election, and then even his prior talking about what happened when he quote unquote lost the election in 2020. Let's take a look. This was a just earth-shattering reporting by the Telegraph out of the UK. Did an amazing job and basically put the BBC, the nationally funded, taxpayer-paid broadcasting system, on notice. Let's take a look.
The BBC claims to be the pinnacle of impartial reporting, but what if there was an internal dossier that revealed that wasn't the case? The Telegraph has seen a letter that reveals one of the BBC's own independent advisors repeatedly warned that the broadcaster had serious and systemic problems. A week before the US election, BBC Panorama released a documentary called Trump: A Second Chance, and in it, they played the following clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight like hell.
But Trump didn't, in fact, say this at all. The BBC spliced together two clips that took place 54 minutes apart. So let's go through it again.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
Now, it's true that a lot of people will still feel Trump's claims that in 2021 the election was stolen were entirely inappropriate and unbecoming of a figure in politics. But irrespective of your personal views on Trump, the question remains, how is a national broadcaster funded by taxpayers on the premise that it will provide impartial reporting, allowed to splice together content in a way that one of its own advisors said materially misled viewers? And we're not even done yet. The footage Panorama showed of the Proud Boys marching towards the Capitol building, seemingly spurred on by Trump's rousing speech, that was actually taken before he'd even addressed the crowd. In fact, the BBC themselves later published a report at odds with Panorama's own timeline.
These are the Proud Boys, another right-wing militia, seen a little earlier that morning.
Howdy, you boy!
Donald Trump will not appear for another hour or so, but they're already heading towards the Capitol.
They even time-stamped the footage to show that the march began at 10:58 a.m., well before Trump's midday speech. The true chronology raises serious questions about the way in which the BBC decided to portray the events of January the 6th. In fact, the memo highlights that shortly after the first extract of Trump's speech, the now president actually said,
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
The BBC advisor who wrote this report claimed Panorama's editing was completely misleading, as Trump did not explicitly exhort supporters to go down and fight at Capitol Hill. They even pointed out that this was a key reason why he didn't face federal charges for incitement to riot. The BBC's Editorial Guidelines and Standards Committee member who wrote this memo raised all of these concerns, among others, with the BBC executive, but they were dismissed, ignored, and even accused of cherry-picking.
Bye-bye, BBC. I mean, this really should be the story that totals Auntie, isn't it? And it's not going to, but what they did with Panorama, where they took an hour-long speech by President Trump and then spliced it,
Really
an hour-long
serious.
segment, spliced it together to make it sound like he's inciting insurrection with the mood music and the doom filter over the top. This is not about clipping actuality, topping and tailing to tell a narrative. This is basically being Dr. Frankenstein to turn a man into a monster. It's just outright lying.
Well, kudos to the Telegraph. They took down the BBC. Base. They're still operating, but the top brass, they're all gone. They're all gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
They better be.
Which they should be.
Not yet, but they better be. Yeah.
Yeah. And we need more of that in the United States. In fact, Trump is now talking about a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against the BBC. He's already sued news organizations here in this country. It made huge amounts of money. And apparently the money that he's getting, he's allocating to various projects. There's rumor that some money may go to the ballroom that's being built at the White House. Bottom line is, you can't trust the media. Who would ever imagine? We condense clips, but we never condense them in a way that is intended to mislead. It's mind-boggling that these otherwise reputable news organizations, and remember, BBC is funded. Every taxpayer pays several hundred pounds a year, equivalent to several hundred.
They're forced to by law, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, whether they watch TV or not.
Yeah, this isn't the BBC's basically first time that they've been extremely discredited. Almost all of their journalists at least in Gaza and in Syria and places like that, were basically terrorists and jihadists. Every single one of them. And those are they're journalists. Basically, they find a local who speaks English and they turn him into a journalist. And these people, many times, and the IDF has actually proved it, they still work for Hamas. They actually get a salary from Hamas every single day. Many times they work for Hamas propaganda, and they're the BBC's kind of journalists. There was a case just about a year ago where they made a whole documentary crying about how evil Israel bombs innocent Palestinian children. And the star of this documentary they presented him as this innocent child who's never done anything wrong. It turns out that he was the son of one of the greatest terrorists in Gaza, and he was the subject of the documentary about how peaceful poor Gazan children are. And Panorama specifically had many issues. Tommy Robinson, who we're a fan of here on the show, he had a documentary called Panodrama, where basically he had hidden cameras where he proved that BBC journalist John Sweeney was making derogatory, classist, homophobic, and racist remarks while trying to record this podcast this video with Tom Robinson. Was really trying to get him to do something. They've been real scumbags for a very long time. And for as bad as regular BBC is, which is horrific, BBC in Arabic is even worse. It's just pure propaganda, many times equal to or even as bad or worse than Al Jazeera. It is time that the British people have the right to choose where their money goes and who receives public funding from taxpayers' money for public transmission, because the people in charge there definitely don't deserve it one bit.
Yeah, and we obviously felt concerned about our public broadcasting system, and funds have been removed from them.
Yeah.
And it's not just international stories. They were caught closer to home, actually, with a story a while back when Queen Elizabeth was on the throne, and they basically doctored some of what she had said and twisted that, which, I mean, that's quite the insult to go and for them to twist and misrepresent what the Queen was saying.
And Princess Diana, they deceived in a 1995 interview with her. They deceived and they changed what she was saying. So even the beloved Princess Diana, the most loved British royalty ever, they also were caught kind of playing with that. In 2012, there's a story where some prosecution and sexual abuses abound. So the BBC has had tons of problems, and it's really time for the British people to stop funding them.
Yeah, and some of this stuff is just out of this world. The stories that they're telling are just so outlandish, you could say they're out of this world. Speaking about things out of this world, let's take a look beyond the skies.
Avi Loeb, renowned theoretical physicist, Harvard professor, head of the Galileo Project, joins us once again. Professor Loeb, always wonderful to see you. And let's start with this. You are one of the most outspoken voices pushing for these images from NASA. They're convinced it's just a comet. Are you convinced?
Thanks for having me, Natasha. The verdict should not be decided by administrators at NASA. It should be decided by the data. And in fact, the best image that they offered at the press conference indicated that there is fuzz elongated. There is some glow in front of the object in the direction of motion, not in the direction of the sun, as we might expect from evaporation of pockets of ice as a result of illumination by sunlight, or the push of the gas that comes out of those pockets of ice opposite to the direction of the sun. Instead, we see it perpendicular to the direction of the sun, in the direction of motion. And the question is whether this is a beam of light or a beam of particles that are used to clear out any micrometeorites that might be impacting the object as it moves forward. So to me, it raises more questions than it answers.
This is so secret. There have been very few people in our entire government that have been allowed or provided access to it.
Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis.
People have been hurt protecting and hiding this information.
Some people claim it would cost them their lives if they spoke out about these things.
Information being locked away that could change the trajectory for a species.
This is the biggest discovery in human history.
Tantalizing, right? Joining me now is the director and producer, Dan Farah. Dan, congratulations on the project.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Non-human intelligence. Must that mean little green men?
No, I made a point of making sure this doc didn't sensationalize the topic at all. We stayed super grounded. We kept it very real. The 34 military, government, intelligence officials I interviewed all broke their silence to reveal that there's been an 80-year cover-up of the existence of non-human intelligent life. And moreover, that the United States is engaged in a high-stakes secret Cold War race with adversarial nations to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin. And the stakes couldn't be higher for this situation. And everyone I interviewed felt it was time to break their silence with what they could lawfully disclose, tell the public what they know that can be shared legally, and do it arm in arm with other credible people in a way that's safe.
Those are two bookends. One about the Atlas Comet and a controversial Harvard researcher who keeps always asking questions as to whether it's just a regular piece of debris in space or whether it's something more intelligent. And then this new documentary that just dropped. I had the opportunity to watch it. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Age of Disclosure.
I haven't heard it, but I'm very eagerly awaiting to watch it. Thank you for sharing that with me. The Three-Eye Atlas is a very interesting phenomenon, like we saw with Oumuamua previously to it. There are some of these comments that don't seem like comments in any way, shape, or form, just by the way they're acting. Specifically, like Avi Loeb was saying regarding the outgassing. So it was moving in a certain way, and usually the only way that the comet will move in that way is if the sun or another star melts the ice, and that causes release of particles, which causes it to move in the equal and opposite reaction. So move the other way. And here it's not the way that the sun is shining the light on. So that is very odd. And there are a bunch of other things that are really odd where it's coming. It's an interstellar object. So it's coming from outside of the plane of essentially the orbit of the planets in our solar system. So it's an external visitor. So there are some very interesting things here. And I definitely advise following Dr. Avi Loeb really closely because he is the utmost authority on the matter. And then yeah, I like the question. Does that mean that they're green little men? And he said, no. I'm waiting to watch the documentary, but it does seem very interesting. And it would be very refreshing. Trump said before he ran in 2020 that he will release all these kind of UFO files. So it's almost obvious that there's some type of life in the universe aside from planet Earth. The real question is, has intelligent beings have they come to Earth, and have we captured their transport vehicles, and are we investigating them? And it seems, according to this documentary, the answer is yes. And if so, that would be very kind of earth-shattering news, because it means that they may be interested in what happened if we caught them once. Doesn't mean we can catch them again. What happens if they return with a much larger force? This is like sci-fi in reality. So it's exciting and terrifying a little bit on both sides, but let's wait for the real evidence to drop.
Yeah, so the documentary is quite telling. What's interesting is it was done over a number of years, and there's a lot of elected officials some of which are still in office, who are openly speaking about what was unspoken.
Yeah, David Fravor is a phenomenal source on that, and he was on the Joe Rogan Experience a bunch of times, so it's worth listening to his interviews on the subject. There are a lot of people who are very smart and have very interesting stories of the things that supposedly happened in the 2000s.
So in the documentary, and the stuff that's
Or the
been
1980s,
disclosed,
sorry.
yeah, what's been disclosed was the following: that there are crashed non-human craft, that there was at least one interaction at a military base, which involved CIA and Air Force, I believe, where they communicated with some aliens, supposedly. There's a lot of sort of discussion as to the nature, and they're not saying they're from outer space. There's a hinting that, without saying it, that they may be coming from the depths of the oceans, because we've really not quite explored just, I think, a little over 27% of the ocean floor. So much of the ocean is, we have no idea what's down there and what's going on. And there's these spottings of these visualizations of craft that are moving out of the ocean,
The
up
water,
into the sky
yeah.
and back into the ocean. So
if there are aliens hiding right beneath our feet or beneath
sort
our
of
ocean,
what's
that would
alluded
be
to.
pretty
Right.
crazy.
When there was testimony again on this, they weren't saying exactly what they're seeing is from, but they are saying that for the last 80 some years, there's been a cover up by not just the United States, but other governments, and that they believe that Russia and perhaps China have actual information and maybe some downed aircraft or whatever you want to call them, UAP. In fact, the FAA has a number for pilots to call, and there have been so many reports of these things. We used to call them UFOs. And ultimately, it's finally now the first time that people are coming forward and saying, this is what I knew, this is what I saw, this is who I spoke with. And essentially, there's an effort to allow these people to speak without being discredited, or some feared for their lives. Basically, they'd either be ridiculed. That's why the thing about the little green men, because anyone that would say this, the CIA apparently had a campaign to actively make fun of all these stories, to just ridicule all. But if you believe any of this, and I can't imagine all these people would put themselves in front of a camera and say what they're saying. Also, it came out that at least two presidents, one of which is Trump under his first term, and other presidents, including right after 9/11, President Bush apparently was going to release information on this. And they were advised not to because of the ramifications and how people would take the news that we're not the only intelligent species out there, because ultimately it impacts a lot. It impacts potentially religion, philosophy, certainly science. So interesting story as it continues to evolve. We'll keep watching it.
We've got to keep monitoring it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And listen, I think that the most important thing is, hey, just like the Epstein information, we want to see what's there. We want to hear, and then everyone can make their own conclusions once we know.
I got to say that aliens is one of the topics that I definitely did a 180 about, and I changed my mind. I used to be completely, you remember when we met, I was in this staunch, this is all made up wacko stories. And then the more I investigated it, the more I discovered that, like a lot of conspiracy theories, it does seem fairly likely that there is a lot of truth to it. Not necessarily every detail, but it's definitely worth investigating further. And I'm happy that now the official policy of the US government is to investigate it and hopefully be very transparent about it.
I agree. And again, like everything, everyone can make their own decisions, but at least have the information and have these discussions so we know what's happening and not be ridiculed for asking questions.
I just got to say, if the worst the CIA is doing to shut people up is to embarrass them with funny stories and, about green men, then the CIA has improved. At least they're not taking people out in order to shut them up. So we're a step in the right direction.
Yeah. And the issue is that we don't always get, like you saw the BBC story. Some of the news stories are twisted. Some of the information that were given by these experts isn't accurate. And that's also, as we've discussed in numerous episodes, that includes healthcare. All the information we're given is
definitely
found later to be inaccurate. If you follow the guidance and follow the science and follow the experts, you found out later you probably shouldn't have.
Always question the experts. Always.
You can listen to them. Definitely should listen, but question. Don't blindly follow. And
exactly.
We know during COVID, there was a lot of stifling of that. People couldn't ask questions. People couldn't, just like the whole UAP, UFO thing. People that were asking questions are being ridiculed. So that shouldn't be the way it is. It's always important to ask the dumb questions because they may not be so dumb in the end. Same comes this time of year with vaccinations, flu season, and so forth. And there's a lot of information now that's coming out that wasn't available previously. That should be added to the mix when you try to make your healthcare decisions for yourself and your family. Let's take a look at it.
Is the concern that it's not safe? So I'm 55. I'm a healthy guy. I got my COVID shots. Should I get a booster or no?
What number was that then for you? 7?
Nah, I don't. Our hospital was mandating it, so I can't keep track of the numbers. But I think it was 3 or 4 for sure.
Look,
would you get it?
No, I did not get the COVID booster shot.
Because you're concerned about safety, or why?
I don't need it. I don't feel like I need it.
Did you get a flu shot?
I do generally get the flu shot, but the flu efficacy ranges from single digits some years to 40-some% at best.
This idea that if you're healthy, you don't need it. Most people are healthy that get vaccines, right? And it's to prevent you from getting sick.
But the problem is it really does not prevent you from getting sick. If you're healthy, what's preventing you is the fact that you've got cellular immunity and you're healthy and you can withstand a common cold.
If you've had it in the past, you're saying, and you have natural immunity. And that's probably most people now, which is, I think, the point that you've made.
In a million years, I would not take the flu shot. And I'll tell you why, because this is what Cochrane and BMJ have found. People who take the flu shot are protected against that strain of flu. They're 4.4 times more likely to get a non-flu infection. And you might find, and a lot of people do, that they get the flu shot and then they get sick. They're usually not getting the flu. They're getting something that is indistinguishable from the flu because the flu shot gives you something called pathogenic priming. It injures your immune system so that you're more likely to get a non-flu viral upper respiratory infection. In fact, the Pentagon published a story, and you can cite this, it's by Wolfe, W-O-L-F-E, in January of this year, in which they said that the flu shot not only primes you for flu, but it primes you for coronavirus. If you get, they gave flu, they had a placebo group and they had a vaccine group because they wanted for military readiness to see if the flu shot was prophylactic against coronavirus. What they found is actually the people who got the flu shot were 36% more likely to get coronavirus. And that's not a lone study. We found 6 other major studies that say the same thing. If you get the flu shot, you're more likely
publishing
to get
something like that. I might as well retire. I'd be finished.
I'm just curious, what in this data makes you think it will be as catastrophic to your career as you think?
What was he so afraid of? The study was a bombshell.
18,468 subjects. 1,957 of them were fully unvaccinated. When comparing the health outcomes of the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, they found an increased risk in the vaccinated of several chronic health conditions. The vaccinated subjects were over 4 times more likely to have an asthma diagnosis.
4.29 times in the adjusted. And that seems, I've looked at a lot of studies, that's 3.26 to 5.65.
They also found 3 times the risk for atopic diseases,
which is a subset of allergic diseases.
They found almost 6 times risk for autoimmune disease.
The autoimmune diseases this paper looked at include thrombocytopenic purpura, rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, MS, multiple sclerosis, and Guillain-Barré syndrome. They mentioned there are over 80 different autoimmune diseases, and what their data showed for autoimmunity, 6 times increase in those who got vaccines when compared to the unvaccinated.
Which is staggering because autoimmune disorders really represent significant morbidity and health costs and suffering accrued over a lifetime.
Neurodevelopmental disorders. What kind of numbers are we talking about? Do you remember?
5.5 times risk for neurodevelopmental disorders.
We know that the immune system is intimately connected with both brain development and brain functioning. And so when the immune system gets triggered by illness, potentially by vaccination, you can get neuropsychiatric symptoms, presumably related to brain inflammation and immune processes in the brain.
2.92 times the amount of motor disabilities, 4.47 times the amount of speech disorders in the vaccinated compared to the unvaccinated.
3 times the rate of developmental delay.
They found the same things I found related to allergy and autoimmunity. Also, 6 times more acute and chronic ear infections.
Interestingly, there were several health conditions where they couldn't even do this analysis because there were none in the unvaccinated group. The way that the mathematical formulas work, you can't have a 0 in any one group and be able to compare risk.
For example, there were 262 children who had ADHD in the vaccinated group. Amongst the unvaccinated group, there were 0 cases of ADHD. 0.
These ones are just mind-boggling. These conditions were not found at all in almost 2,000 unvaccinated kids. 0 brain dysfunction, 0 diabetes, 0 behavioral problems, 0 learning disabilities, 0 intellectual disabilities, 0 tics, and 0 other psychological disabilities in the unvaccinated.
Today we investigate one of the biggest medical controversies of our time, vaccines. There's little dispute about this much. Vaccines save many lives, and rarely they injure or kill. A special federal vaccine court has paid out billions for injuries from brain damage to death, but not for the form of brain injury we call autism. Now we have remarkable new information. A respected pro-vaccine medical expert used by the federal government to debunk the vaccine autism link says vaccines can cause autism after all. He claims he told that to government officials long ago, but they kept it secret.
Yates Hazelhurst was born February 11th, 2000. Everything was normal, according to his medical records, until he suffered a severe reaction to vaccinations. Rolf Hazelhurst is Yates's dad.
At first, I didn't believe it. I did not believe that vaccines could cause autism. I didn't believe it.
This is today's hard reality for Yates.
So a couple of points. So the Henry Ford Health study that was showing all the statistics and that hidden camera and so forth, there's been a lot of critique on that study. The follow-up timelines and a bunch of other things, which call into question some of the conclusions. Okay.
It's important.
Go ahead.
That's important to point out. Thank you.
The flip side of that is that conversations like this and assertions of this type were completely buried all the time. Now they're coming out, and fair is fair. You come out and you publish a study or you promote a study, and then you have people critique it. And even if it doesn't show the entire truth, is it showing some of the truth? Is it showing something that we didn't know before? And that's part of the issue, that in the past, as you saw in the last segment on that compilation, where a researcher came forward and said, I advised the government that basically there were some concerns, in this case with autism, and they basically suppressed it. That is the issue that everyone is grappling with. We just want to know the truth. That's the theme of all of this. We just want to know the truth. And I'm not saying that everything that was in that last compilation is completely true, but it's out there now. And these are the kinds of things. I don't know if I've ever had a flu vaccine in my life. I don't think I did. I know when I was a paramedic, there were certain things I was required to take. I don't remember if flu vaccines were one of them, but since that time, I haven't had any flu vaccines. And simply, why not? Because I know that the efficacy, the likelihood that it's going to prevent the flu is, like was stated, it could be in the single digits, so less than 10%. So in other words, 90% of the time or more, might be 95% of the time, it won't work. And part of it's how they come up with these design of the vaccine for the upcoming flu season. So you get some different virus, some different variation on it. It's not going to protect you. So
I think the ironic part is what RFK Jr. said, that if you get the flu vaccine, you are more likely to get a COVID or SARS-19 or coronavirus. That's so ironic.
Some other infection.
Yeah, other flu-like case, exactly. I think a lot of the autoimmune diseases, I think the vast majority of them are caused by our current and modern way of life, by the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, the pollution, and of course the vaccines as well. Like I think the majority of autoimmune diseases have something to do with our way of life and not necessarily are inherent in human societies.
Oh, no, absolutely true. Something has changed without a doubt. Also, the number of, as we mentioned, number of vaccines, the doses you're getting from what used to be 10 or 12 when I was a kid to 70 something now is just certainly begs the question if that's in any way causing an issue. And again, we're not giving medical advice here. We're not saying what not to do. We're not saying take this or don't take that. We're saying ask questions, have these discussions. It's important to not blindly just accept what is, because what they tell you today may be wrong 5 years from now when they look back and say, oh, that's not right. So one of the examples we were talking about earlier is peanuts. When I was a kid, I don't remember any kids in school with me having a peanut allergy. Now they took peanuts off the planes and all this because they're scared. It's so prevalent, right? Look at what we've discovered regarding peanuts. Let's take a look.
In the year 2000, the American Academy of Pediatricians recommended not giving peanuts to infants for fear of allergies. It was later discovered that, in fact, that was causing an estimated 80% of the allergies because the bodies were learning to treat peanuts as a foreign object. The explosion in allergies was driven by the bad piece of advice, which was itself based on nothing. I asked Dr. Anthony Fauci about this back in 2019.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, now believes that telling families to eliminate peanuts actually made things worse. Was that an error?
I didn't make the recommendation.
You didn't.
That's for sure. I wouldn't say it was an error. I think what it was a judgment call that in the retrospect was the wrong call.
So that wrong call 17 years later was reversed by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, recommending you now expose infants to peanuts early so that they get used to it, generate an allergy. Now we have the first study showing the impact of this exposure. Already, you've got a 40% decline in peanut allergies. Peanuts have gone from the #1 most allergenic food, most kids affected, to #2. Eggs are now above it. This is the beginning of a major change. The reason I say it hasn't enough responsibility has not been claimed is because most caregivers in the latest survey still don't expose their kids to peanuts early on because they're remembering that earlier piece of bad medical advice. The American Academy of Pediatrics, they need to be out front, like loudly beating the drum on this, because clearly, as this new study shows, it's written up in the Times today, it can make a massive difference.
Oops. It wasn't an error. It's just bad judgment. Okay. Call it what you want to call it, but that's
amazing how the cause and effect can become like a cycle. Because of the effects, let's make up a cause. Then because of that cause, we have an effect. And then because of that, and it's like a catch-22. You know what I mean? It turns out that the trying to stop peanuts and peanut butter exposure caused the allergy to spike like that. And I think that many allergies are similarly caused by lack of exposure to certain things. To me, this was always obvious. I spent some of my formative years growing up in Israel, and in Israel, the most common snack for children by far, bar none, is called bamba. And it is basically peanut butter puffs. And it's a fairly healthy snack compared to most. And the existence of peanut butter allergies in Israel is non-existent. There literally is no such a thing as peanut allergies in Israel. Everybody brings bamba to school. Everybody eats bamba in school, and nobody is allergic to peanuts unless they moved from the US or something. It's been obvious for a very long time. It was funny how defensively Fauci was like, I didn't make those recommendations. Yeah, but how long were you in power without revoking those recommendations? That should be the real question, because he definitely lacks a pair of kahunas.
It's okay to say you made a mistake or that
Yeah.
our guidance was wrong. He couldn't say,
Yeah,
he couldn't
that's
bring
what I
himself
have
to
to
say, our guidance was wrong, we've corrected it, we learned from our mistake. They won't say, it's a judgment thing. Okay, sure. Put the wrong answer on your test in school, you can just tell your professor or teacher. It's not an error. It's just a lack of, it was improper judgment when I picked that answer. But what's interesting is I think it's important for us to understand the world around us, take a step back, ask questions. And we talk about, in a lot of our episodes now, we include a biomimicry section where we talk about how perhaps we learn from nature or can learn from nature. I think today it's timely to realize how we are maybe not that different in how we act, how we develop. We think we're so unique, but maybe we can learn by looking around us. Here we are, biomimicry, our little take on the world around us, what we can learn from it.
Nothing compares to the true artist. The female will decide. Spy Puffer's creation is hardly worth a second look. She's after a masterpiece. But for this discerning art critic, there's still room for improvement. Especially when some debris spoils the design. A blemish easily dealt with by the male. But it still needs some finishing touches. Such as shells to decorate the ridges. They're more than an artistic flourish. They stabilize the ridges, slowing the water that might stir the center. For this is where the female will lay her eggs. But the male has run out of shells, and the female is losing interest. Spy Puffer becomes the artist's assistant. The finishing touch he needs. All this striving for artistic perfection is a test of his fitness. Satisfied with the aesthetic details, the female enters the nest. They join together, cheek to cheek. Then, quick as a flash, the eggs are laid and fertilized. With a little help from Spy Puffer, the next generation of artists is on its way.
What the hell is going on? He's being watched. Snakes are straight assholes. You could tell the way they looking at him. They plotting right now. See how they got their necks up? That means they coming to get him. The lizard don't even see what's happening. But you understand me? One thing about a lizard, I think he a Geico. If he a Geico, he got a 15% chance of making it up out of here. Oh, he peep game right now. He seen it. He seen it. You watch. Oh, get out of there, man. Go. Did you see the feet on him? Oh, they coming from everywhere, cuz. This is crazy. Oh, that's up. He has just entered into Snakeville, USA. There's snakes coming from all angles. As he dips and dashes, he makes a getaway, jumps into the arms of a thick snake. The twist is on, but they twisting themselves. Find it, find the loophole. Boom, gone.
last one at the end was posted by Google. It's a Gemini animation, but it shows it in a conceivable way how even spiders are like we are.
No,
And nothing
well,
like
that video of the snakes in its entirety.
That's Snoop Dogg
Yeah.
narrating a nature show.
It's a
It's an oldie but a
phenomenal
goodie.
clip.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, if anybody hasn't watched that, it's definitely worth it.
And then earlier on, we had at the very beginning, for those just listening to the podcast, we had the embryo of a dolphin, the human, evolving side by side. And it's remarkably similar up until the end stages. And then we had a penguin basically proposing. And it's not just any rock, it picks this really specific, perfectly shaped pebble as its offering to the zookeeper. Listen, you could see some traits in these animals that
The pufferfish engineering, literally engineering, using these shells to stabilize it so that the currents don't shift and shape the beautiful, essentially, nest that he's created for making love. And I like how the end, how when they're, I guess, making love, he bites her on the neck in order to catch her when fertilizing her eggs. That is pretty sexual. Like humans, we do the exact same thing many times. So we are truly a product of evolution. And the more you investigate nature and the more you see similarities between all life forms, it makes evolution just so obvious. I grew up thinking that, hey, maybe your grandfather was a monkey, but mine wasn't. And the more you study the natural world, the more it just becomes completely evident.
Yeah, and I think, listen, it's not just us talking about this. I think even General Motors has conceded that the biomimicry is a thing. So let's look at one of their ads.
Crab walk? Again? Last time. Let's try something different.
The first ever GMC Hummer EV SUV.
Let me guess. You want to do that again?
One electrifying SUV.
And that's a great advertisement for a really great SUV, an extremely inefficient and lazy SUV. It basically has twice the amount of batteries of any other electric SUV for kind of worse range, but it is a very impressive piece of engineering. It's ridiculously expensive, like GM unfortunately has been recently. But yeah, it is an impressive truck and it's got some cool features, notably the crab walk. And if they can only be profitable on it and mass produce it, then maybe they'd make an influence, but unfortunately neither is true.
Yep. Again, it is what it is. Everyone, at least they're trying.
Yeah, it's a good ad.
Definitely a good ad. And as we wind down the episode, as we get to the very end, we like obviously putting some amusing things on there. This time of year, I guess it's timely to hear back from some of our prior presidents wishing us all the best this time of year. Here is one from former President Biden.
So to our listeners, it says, Happy 4th of July with Biden holding a turkey. And for our international listeners, turkey is associated with Thanksgiving today, not 4th of July. So that's Independence Day. That's barbecue day, baby.
Yeah, and listen, as we think about things, listen, we just went through a government shutdown and people were struggling. Government workers were not being paid, and it's always great if someone could find some amount of amusement to throw at what was not an easy time. Look at this that was posted.
This is like a street side sign that says "Little Darlings now auditioning federal employees."
Yeah, so it's a gentleman's club, aka also known as a strip club. So they're joking to say, hey, if you're a good-looking government worker and you need some work, come over here and you could strip for us over here. Listen,
that's the Doge doing its job, cutting useless government jobs.
Yeah, hey, at least some amusement. I don't know if that was a real sign or if that was someone doctored it, but either way, for anything for amusement, just like when you see those Department of Transportation signs on the roadway and they have something funny written on them, I think that's always a positive thing. little humor sometimes gets the message across a little better. We've been saying that for a long time.
Always.
Yeah, and we've actually posted some other like signs that we found amusing. And there's a place in southern India that's really good at posting these amusing signs. Let's put up a couple of them, see what you think. These are different than the ones we've had previously. So it's a colorectal center. So it says, "We treat all kinds of assholes. Call us if you're living with a painful one." Chennai's first colorectal and gut wellness center. So again, that's a massive billboard, right? That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
You got to admit the people driving there must obviously find it funny and then wonder what the next sign is that they're going to put up. I got one more of these. I guess they can be a little more brazen with their sense of humor there than they maybe could get away with here. But let's take a look at another one. Say for the same colorectal center. What does this one say?
It says, "How's your life become a pain in the ass? Has your life? Call us. Let's get the bottom of it. Let's get to the bottom of it."
Yeah, has your life
Very
become
cute.
a pain in the ass? Call us and we'll get to the bottom of it. Pretty straightforward ad and gets to the point of what type of work they do.
I think
So
it
that's
could have been more effective if they put a real picture of a hot ass, but it is indie after all, so just the essential drawing of an ass is close enough.
Yeah, and people always criticize. There's always opinions. Do you recall who Joan Rivers was?
Nope.
Yeah, a little before your time. She was really funny. She was a very outspoken person, great sense of humor. She was being interviewed on a show I know you know nothing about. It's called Dame Edna. And it was an Australian humorist, comedian named Barry Humphries, who's since passed away. And it started off with him having a show where he made fun of the stereotypical housewife. So he was dressed as a housewife. And it took off into this big thing where he dressed as this fictional woman character and he'd interview people. It was like amazing. It just took off and it became a funny thing and people would literally watch him interview people. So here is him interviewing Joan Rivers and see if you can get a take on what's being discussed.
They're lucky because they can stand up when they go to the bathroom. And they miss. How can they miss when they stand up? That's what I think you can tell what kind of a lover a man is going to be from the way he tinkles. If a man in a room that is fully lit cannot hit a hole this big around.
On that one.
Yeah, so that was, there's always been that adage. Women are always wondering how guys can make a mess and not hit the bowl if they're in the bathroom trying to pee.
There is some physics behind that, especially when they do it in the dark. But
yeah,
there are
in
some other
in a fully lit room. She has a point, right?
Yeah, but men never have an excuse not to clean up after themselves. That stands corrected.
I guess then this segues into this next video clip of a reporter trying to report on a story, and this happens.
What was supposed to be a prank on a teacher instead backfired on the students. A blindfolded half-court shot that is now the talk of campus and beyond.
You...
Put that in the story too.
Are you kidding me?
It went in.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
Is that on tape?
Yeah.
That was perfect.
You are kidding me.
I'm going like this so I can get the goal in the background. It went in.
I don't know if I messed it up by my little screen, but oh my god.
I'm gonna.
Did that really go in?
Yeah, it went in. It's starting to freak me out.
What was supposed to be a prank on a teacher instead backfired on the students. A blindfolded half-court shot that is now the talk of campus and beyond.
You...
Put that in the story too.
Are you kidding me?
It went in.
So you get how these stories are connected?
Yeah, he's genuinely surprised.
He was reporting on someone
Yeah.
who basically did that. He didn't think he'd be able to do it. He just threw the ball, and so he obviously would, based on the prior discussion, with Joan Rivers. This guy must do pretty good. He obviously got good aim.
He definitely has good aim.
Even without trying.
At least when not trying. I don't know. Maybe when he tries, his aim isn't that good.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, ultimately, I would say life is not always great. Sometimes we have our ups and downs. Have you ever had what you describe as a shitty day?
Definitely. More than once, unfortunately.
How bad could it possibly be?
I would say not as bad as being covered in shit, but I do have babies whose diapers I do change. Yeah, that's not the worst of it for sure.
Okay, let's see. So next time you say you're having a shitty day, you could think of this. Here we go.
Oh my god! Dodging people. Oh my god! Oh, what the? Oh, it's on my face! Oh my.
So
yeah,
another reason
quite literally a shitty day.
Better to ride a horse than be behind it. Most of the time that doesn't happen. Obviously the horse had diarrhea, but normally that doesn't happen. The boob just falls out of the horse and goes to the ground. But they do.
Well, nowadays they have some bags that they kind of hook on the back, and if it's the decent bags, if it's the bad bags, it just falls. If it's a decent one, it has something that covers from splashes, I assume.
But they do get gas sometimes. And if you're downwind, I'd rather ride a horse.
Yes, true. It's much more beautiful and meaningful of an experience as well. You get to connect with the animal much closer.
And that being said, listen, we spend our times doing things in life. Sometimes you wonder, are we getting anywhere? Is there a purpose to life? What's the purpose of life? What are we trying to do?
Have babies.
That is true. But sometimes people try to invent things that are so addictive, you question what we basically get drawn to, what we get suckered into. Like, for example, social media, online gaming, all this other stuff. People get addicted, right? Quite a while back, someone had already figured that out long before they had the technology we have now. And this little invention is the prime example of that. Tell me you're not going to get hooked watching this. Ready? Here we go.
So for our listeners, that was like a box with a little switch on top and almost like a mechanical snake, just like a rod. And every time you push the kind of button forwards, the little door opens and the rod comes out and pushes it backwards, and it's playing a game. And towards the end there, after a while, suddenly it raises a white flag. Basically, I'm giving up. And then the minute you back off, it pushes that rod, the button one more time, just so it remains in the position it likes. So that's very reminiscent of life, very well engineered, very cute. Would be a cool toy or game for kids to play with, actually.
And a reminder of determination, the value of determination. Don't give up. Doesn't work the first time, try something different. It went faster, it went slower.
Yeah, different approaches. Yeah,
tried a few different things. So machine versus human, and the machine did pretty good, right?
Yeah, it won.
It won. And this was long before we have the AI like we have now. So perhaps it's a tease for the next episode, where I think we are going to cover some AI related topics that we've been discussing that we want to cover, and really the evolution of AI and some of the things that are actually impacting the job market and the future of our existence. That's for next
possibly in the form of an In Focus episode. Keep your eyes out for that one. Yeah,
we'll see. We definitely want to cover it in some format. So that being said, I think we've covered a lot today, and I'm sure you have other things to do. Just sit here and being on our podcast.
We appreciate the time you have spent with us. That's for sure.
We appreciate you joining us. We ready to have a couple other podcasts in the works, and we look forward to you joining us again. Until that time.
Episode 25, guys. It's a big one.
Yep, coming up. And 24, this is a wrap. We'll talk again soon. Yo, nice doing another one with you.
Yeah, have a great Thanksgiving, everybody, and enjoy your Thanksgiving with your awesome family.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Be safe. Say don't eat too much, but it is
Eat
what
too
it
much.
is.
That's the point of this holiday.
And keep asking questions and keep joining the conversation. We appreciate you. Take care.
See you next time.